What's up, everyone? Here's it's a special Sunday stream today. Um, there is I guess a podcast or um a video I wanted to watch, so I figured why not watch it together? Why not watch it with everyone? So that is what I'm going to be doing. Uh, yep, that is what I'm doing. Okay, so yeah, there's this video that I wanted to watch out. I wanted to watch, so let's watch it together. Yeah.
Who have more economic or social status than they do. And
Lost Boys. In March 2025, the Centre of Social Justice released this report, which has sent a couple of shockwaves across the UK, especially across the media. And just to give you a little bit of a sort of preface and some context on what this report says, at the start of the report, Andy Cook, who's the CEO of the report, says, "We listen to those working on the front line, the teachers, the youth workers, the charities, and the parents who day in, day out see the struggles of young people. And in recent years, they've been telling us the same thing. Something is going on with our boys." And because of this, they wrote this report called The Lost Boys, which looks at all of the different facets of why young men are struggling. And in this report, they say boys are struggling in education. They're more likely to take their own lives. They're finding it more difficult to find stable work. And far too often, they're caught in crime. The numbers don't lie. Something has shifted, and we cannot ignore it any longer. It's not just about Andrew Tate or online influencers.
You know, one of the things that if you guys seen my earlier videos, like my earlier live videos, one of the things that made me want to get to do, videos and create this channel is that I learned a very striking statistic that make up men's self deletion rate has increased dramatically over time. And when I was a young man, I suffered from depression, and I also wanted to, you know, self delete. So it was it was something that I cared about because I knew why. Because we had so many young men that were directionless, guideless, hopeless. So, that was something that I was understanding and feeling. I want, so I want, so I created these videos and just had my own opinion and stuff like that. So it was something that was on my mind.
These are symptoms, not the cause. The deeper truth is that too many boys are growing up without the guidance, discipline, and purpose they need to survive. And there's some frankly horrific graphs, which actually sent the CEO of my company, a lady called Georgie, um, into quite an emotional state. She texted me and told me she was crying looking at some of these graphs, which we'll talk about today. But this is a subject that I know both of you know very, very well. So I'm keen to get into exactly why this is happening and what we can do about it. But to preface this discussion, to understand where you both come from and the perspective you have, Logan, who are you and
yes,
what do you do?
I'm a behavioral scientist turned dating coach. So that means that I take all the lessons from the field of behavioral science, how we make decisions, and then I apply them to the field of relationship science, which is how love works. And so I'm really passionate about this topic because for a long time, I've found that wherever I go, people say, "Oh, I know all these great single women. Do you know any great single guys?" And I just thought, "Oh, okay, maybe that's always been happening." But when I actually dug into the data, I saw that we are truly in a dating crisis right now, and there is a huge mating gap between the type of men that women are looking for and the type of men that are available. This is a critical conversation around truly the future of humanity because marriage rates are down. That means birth rates are down. And so this conversation is extremely important.
And what sort of reference points do you draw upon? Because you've got some sort of unique access to data, right?
Right. So I work at Hinge for the last 5 years. And so I have access to tons of data there around how daters are dating now, how daters are dating differently, what sets successful daters apart. And then I also have conducted my own research for this conversation. So I sent out a survey to thousands of my newsletter subscribers, and people were very excited to talk about this. And I've conducted a lot of new research that I'll be sharing for the first time on this topic.
So I make my living looking at data and trying to come up with insights. I spend most of my career looking at data to try and add shareholder value, and then I have the luxury now of focusing on things I'm really interested in. And I just stumbled upon data about that reflects that the cohort that has ascended fastest globally is women, and this is a wonderful thing and a huge collective victory. And the group that has fallen furthest fastest is men in Western markets. And the data was just so overwhelming. And also, I was close to being one of these men. I didn't have a lot of economic or romantic prospects when I was a young man, but there were programs and an environment where I could be successful. And I worry that some of the temptations, the technology, the economic trends, had they been where they are now then, I could have very easily ended up a statistic. So I just sort of relate to these problems.
I'm keen to understand from your perspectives what you think like the first domino that falls in a young man's life or a young boy's life that causes the outcomes we're talking about today. Like where is the first place to start?
So the research I've looked at, and Richard Reeves from the American Institute of Boys and Men has done good research here, the point of failure, if you reverse engineered issues to, is when a boy loses a male role model. And that is, in the US, we have the second most single family parent homes behind Sweden. And what's interesting is that in single parent homes, girls actually have similar outcomes, similar rates of high school attendance, income, rates of self-harm. Boys, once they lose a male role model, become much more likely to be incarcerated, engage in criminal activity, harm themselves. It ends up that while being physically stronger, boys are emotionally and mentally much weaker. So the loss of a male role model is
This is a thing where I have a shitty dad. A shitty dad. So I agree that I suffered a lot when I was a kid. I had no male role model. I had none. It only took until I was like in my 30s, late 30s, for me to wake up, see the struggles of other men, trying to sympathize, empathize, and learn from other men, the struggles of other men, learning what it's to be a man, uh, to improve myself, to improve my mindset of masculinity. So, but this is hard. It is hard. Where I spent most of my life just struggling mentally, emotionally. Um, this is why fathers are so important. Good fathers are so important, and why I'm so against single motherhood. And this is the thing. My mom was basically a single mom. I love her. She's an amazing mom. But being an amazing mom didn't help me become a better man. It was a struggle. It was. So this is why, again, not like I hate single moms. It's that it's not a benefit. It's not a benefit for society. It's not a benefit for boys. It's not a benefit for girls. To be raised by single moms, it's not a benefit.
I would argue, kind of the first point of failure that predicts that a boy is going to struggle. And that has impacts on family court, economic policy, and just general zeitgeist in our society where men need to step up. If we want better men, we need to be better men. We
Yeah.
need to step into that void.
Another one that Richard Reeves talks about is that there's not enough men in the education system. So I
100%.
believe when Tim Waltz was a teacher, 1 out of 3 teachers in his school was a man, but now it's like 24%.
Yeah.
And so where do kids spend most of their time? In school. And who's teaching them? Mostly not men.
And you think, well, women can be fantastic teachers, and it's
Right.
true. But after school programs, not as many coaches that typically are male, not as much compensation, so they don't get rewarded for being
Mhm.
coaches. And if you just think about it logically, who does a teacher champion? A teacher champions someone that reminds them of themselves when they were a kid. So, and also just look at there's incredible bias, I would argue, against males in school. A boy is twice as likely to be suspended on a behavior adjusted basis, twice as likely to be suspended for the exact same infraction as a girl,
Mhm.
5 times as likely if it's a black boy. And so, and once you're suspended twice,
This is a thing where I don't know about you, but if you are paying attention to TikTok there's a debate, or there's a dialogue where a lot of women are asking, why are so few men going to college? Because education is not a good environment for men, even at the earlier onset. I've said this, and I think my last live. Men are not championed. Men are not. No one is proud of men. No one is cheering for men. No one is cheering for boys. That's the thing. No one is caring about the boys. That's the and, and that's the thing where it's hurting boys being very disinterested in education. So by that disinterest growing, they don't want to continue into college.
It probably means you're not going to college. In addition, look at the behaviors we promote in school. Sit still, be a pleaser, be organized, raise your hand. You basically just described a girl. And so, and also, quite frankly, a lot of the jobs that require tertiary education attainment, there's more women now in law school and medical school. And quite frankly, good for them. They're just better at that. They're better students. They deserve to make more money. They deserve it. But the reality is, it has huge ramifications when we no longer have wood, auto, or metal shop. They've gone away.
Right.
So those used to be a path to do some middle class jobs. They've been replaced by computer science. And so what are the paths for the 2/3 of males that aren't going to end up with a traditional liberal arts college degree?
Right. And just to add a few more stats to that, so we know that 70% of valedictorians in the US are female, and women are much more likely to be in the top 10% of their class. But then on the SAT, men and women, or young men and women, earn the same scores. So there's definitely something happening in schools that is prioritizing the female experience, or that women are better at that. We definitely want to celebrate the success of women. I think the changes that have happened over the last 50 years are incredible. And I feel like I'm a beneficiary of that. And so is my daughter. If you look at all of the books that my daughter was given when she was born, they're about great women in history. You can be anything. Dream big, little one. And so I feel like we have given women so many tools to achieve. And in many ways, those have been manifested. But now boys are being left behind. And so this isn't a zero-sum game. I was nervous about coming on here because I thought people would say, she's a male apologist. She doesn't see how much women are still struggling. I think everyone is struggling. I think life is hard.
Yeah.
But what's happening right now is we need to have empathy for young men, and we need to bring them up, because this isn't just a problem about young men. And patriarchy doesn't just hurt women. A lot of people think about the patriarchy as something that prizes men and hurts women. But when there's a very narrow definition of men, everyone is hurt by that. And that's all the research that I've done, is over and over seeing women feel like they are not enough good men to date, and men feel like they're being held to a ridiculous standard of holding both sides of the coin, being feminine and masculine.
It turns out, as you were speaking, I was looking at the stats around fatherless homes, and it turns out that there has been a significant increase in the amount of young boys being raised without a father present. About 25% live without a biological step or adoptive father, according to the National Fatherhood Initiative. In the US has the world's highest rate of children living in a single parent household, and 92% of the time that's with the mother alone. And in 1968, only 11% of children lived with only their mother, compared to 21% in 2020. So that's doubled in the last 50 odd years, which is pretty staggering. And then obviously the consequence of that, as Scott described, is that individuals from father absent homes were 300% more likely to carry drugs, to carry guns, to deal drugs, and there's this huge plethora of mental health consequences if you don't have a father in the home. I mean, what do we do about that? And like, where are the fathers?
Yeah.
Where are where are they going?
Well, it's complicated. There's male abandonment. There's just no getting around it. But also going back to family court, sometimes the courts in the our economy make it difficult for a man to stay involved in the kids' lives. And also, family court's getting better at saying, all right, the kids, I mean, just a personal anecdote. I have a friend who recently has gone through divorce, 2 daughters, very much wants to be involved in their lives. They're 13 and 15-year-old girls. And quite frankly, dad's there on the weekends and they got their own thing going on. And they don't necessarily make dad a priority. And dad's not around for what I call the garbage time. And that is what I found with my boys is the moments of serendipity and connection happen randomly when you're taking them to school, when you're out in the back, jumping around or playing whatever it is, these garbage moments. And when you're not in the household, for whatever reason, there isn't that much garbage time. And I think slowly but surely they lose sometimes connection with their kid. There's something weird going on. I'm curious, Logan, if you've got data on this, but you have a 1-year-old daughter, right? You're going to be amazed when my 14-year-old boy had a Halloween party. And the boys are like cute, but they're dopes. They're boys. There's some 14-year-old girls that look like they could be the junior senator from Pennsylvania. They're 5'10". They're articulate. Yeah. Hello, Mr. Galloway. How are you? What a lovely home. And the boys are like, I don't know. And biologically, girls mature faster. Their prefrontal cortex is 18 months ahead of a boy's. An 18-year-old girl or woman is competing against a 16-and-a-half-year-old when she's competing against an 18-year-old. And they're even finding that it's getting worse, that women or girls are starting to menstruate earlier and boys' testicles are descending later. So the gap in maturity, biological gap, they think might even be growing. They don't know if it's pesticides. But when I meet my eighth graders colleagues, there's a huge difference
Colleagues.
between
Yeah.
between the boys and the girls.
Yeah.
And one of Richard's suggestions is that we redshirt boys, that we hold them a year back. The boys start kindergarten at 6, whereas girls start at 5.
So the research in the UK shows that 70% of girls are ready to start school at age 5, but many fewer boys are capable of starting at that age in terms of readiness. And so if you were to hold boys back, then they might be on more equal playing field for those critical moments of 4 to 5, of 13 to 14, where the brains really develop at a different stage.
I want to talk about that sort of early education experience and how it can be adapted, but also just
Yeah.
like if the environment of the classroom is right for boys. As we were talking about the point about fathers and listeners as well, I found this graph, which is also pretty shocking. And it goes into something you said, Scott. It basically shows that the absence of a father on a boy
Mhm.
causes depressive symptoms, but the absence of a father on a young girl doesn't cause the same
Yeah.
depressive symptoms,
Yeah.
which means that the absence of a father for a boy drastically increases their chance of being depressed, whereas if for a girl it doesn't.
There's a lot of
Which
other
is-
graphs that look like that in terms of women and young girls are just actually a lot more resilient in childhood. So if you are in foster care as a young woman, you have less negative outcomes than young men. And so there's this theory in parenting of, is your child an orchid or a dandelion? And so the orchid really needs very particular situations to grow. They need a certain amount of light. They need to be watered in a particular way, and they'll thrive in some situations and they will not thrive in others. Whereas a dandelion can really survive in many situations. And so women, young girls tend to be more dandelions in childhood. And so that's why when you have a boy and a girl both in negative situations, the boy is more negatively impacted.
Boys are just weaker. There's a crazy stat
Hmm.
I read that 2 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl, both sexually molested. And to be clear, they're equally heinous crimes. But the boy who's sexually molested is 6 to 10 times more likely to kill himself later in life. It ends up that boys are just less resilient.
Do you think there's somehow more of a stigma there? Like, I wonder why that's
Shame,
so
they
dramatic.
can't talk about
Yeah.
it, get uncomfortable,
Yeah.
feel there's a lack. I mean, I think just until a few years ago, the social incentives were to never speak about it.
Right.
I was on Lewis Howe's podcast, and he just openly said, I was sexually abused as a child. And it was so shocking for me
Wow.
to hear this big, handsome guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have said it 10 or 20 years
I
ago.
agree.
I think people would have assumed that it was his fault. It made him
Mhm.
less of a man. So I think a lot of that has hopefully gotten better. But
Mhm.
we just have to acknowledge boys mentally and emotionally are weaker than girls.
Lewis Howes didn't admit that until a couple of years ago.
Is that right?
So he's lived with that his whole life. And
Wow.
it wasn't until he was, I think, having dysfunctional relationships and a few other things had happened that he decided he wanted to say it publicly for the first time, which again feeds into your point. We actually asked some of our audience to write in. And
This is the thing. One thing that I love about my channel is that I'm going to speak my truth, speak how I feel, speak what I think. I'm going to let it out. I think one of the things that have been a detriment to men is not being able to express yourself. Not being able to express yourself. And this is one of the things why I promote within my chat to just, you want to talk. This is why I always love to foster a friendship, a friendly environment in my chat, is that we can just talk. We can talk. Say how you feel, say how you think, whatever. This is the thing where I don't even care about trolls. It's all good. You want to say, express whatever thought you have, go for it. I think one of the dangers of holding everything in is that when you hold all that in, there's a point of exploding. And not many people can handle, the exploding of all that emotion, all that pumped up feelings.
one of the people that wrote in was a teacher in a primary/preschool. And she said to me, she was an anonymous teacher in Germany. And she says, every year it seems like more and more children, always boys, have this new energy to destroy the classroom dynamics. These boys almost always have two things in common: a lack of boundaries at home and unsupervised, unlimited access to all kinds of content on the internet, e.g. porn. Their perception of what is okay and what is right becomes completely distorted. I've tried so many things, and every year it's becoming an even bigger challenge. Young boys in school. So one proposal is to delay education for boys, put them in education later. Is the classroom itself a problem? Like the sitting in school, listening to someone speak at you. Someone proposed to me on this podcast before that boys need more sort of practical play. and the classroom isn't designed for that. I wasn't sure if that was.
Well, in single sex boys school, they end up with double the amount of recess time. And that is they have I equate boys to dogs. A happy dog is a tired dog, and if it's not tired, if it doesn't get to run, it's going to cause trouble. And I feel the same way about boys. So in these schools where they decide what's best for the boys, there's usually more exercise and more free play and more roughhousing, co-ed schools. And you're also seeing, I think, with boys, I mean, there's just by even acknowledging that men play a critical role in boys' lives a few years ago, that was seen as sexist. What you mean? What you're saying? Moms can't do this? And I can just tell you, there are certain moments when my partner needs me to weigh in. I don't know if it's the depth of my voice, my physical size, the way they relate to me, the fact that I'm not. You need dad, or that's what I found, especially with boys. They need almost like that not physical intimidation, but it's almost like they begin tuning out their mom over time. I mean, they're incredibly close to their mother. They look to her for nurturing. When they really have a problem, I find they go to mom, but they will constantly test the boundaries, constantly. And I think a lot of single mothers, quite frankly, with boys, just can't keep a lid on that kid. They can't control the kid. So, and I think you're finding at schools when there's no male kind of, I don't know, involvement or that I don't know, what I'll call physical presence. And then you add on this DOPA machine that they get used to squeezing a DOPA bag 100 times a day as they need it. And then you take the DOPA bag away, they're just more prone to emotional outbursts. I'm curious if you've done any research around why that emotional outburst more common among boys than girls.
I haven't done that research, but I am imagining that there's moms out there that are raising boys on their own, and they might be like, yes, it is hard, but what do I do?
Right.
And so for that boy who isn't taught by a lot of guys in school,
Personal opinion. I'm nobody. I'm not. No academic. I see it as, here's the thing where it's nature, maybe biological, where men in general, boys, it's that urge of hunting, being a hunter, being a force. So a lot of this is a thing where why men tend to strive better when they're being active, when they are doing active things, sports, fights, just being active. Why when dealing with around other men, more roughhousing, more something, busting on, making fun of each other. It's just aggression. And even in younger boys, they need that too, in my opinion. We are not cultivating that. We're not cultivating that energy, in my personal opinion. We are doing now a detriment to younger boys, where we want them to. I think it's personal opinion. We are pushing younger boys to be more feminine, and I think they can't control that kind of mindset. The femininity is not the feminine mindset. The feminine way of life isn't productive for young boys, in my opinion. So could be that's just my thought. Why a lot of young boys are suffering, where I don't think that they are, um, you know, being able to navigate life correctly, in my personal opinion.
and isn't in the Boy Scouts, which doesn't exist anymore, or it doesn't have big brothers, big sisters, like what does that mom do?
So with that, you talk about Boy Scouts. In America, there's Scouts for America, and
Right.
it can be boys and girls.
Right.
But Girl Scouts have their own single
Yeah.
sex, but Boy Scouts aren't allowed to have their own
Right.
single sex. So the question is, all right, what do you do? And I think that we need a societal zeitgeist that says immediately if they're
And this is the thing where we have demonized boys, men to such a degree where, back in the day, like I said, little boys didn't have the on average, don't have the freedom to run around, roughhouse, do, little boy activities like Boy Scouts and stuff like that. Because whatever reason, probably, negative ones, a lot of those are gone. The Big Brothers things, that seems like it's gone as well. There's not enough after school activities, so
there's no longer a male involved, we have to get other men involved
Mhm.
and acknowledge that that's not being sexist, that's important that you get men involved. And I think so I came from a single parent household, raised by a single immigrant mother who lived and died as secretary, light of my life. as soon as my dad was gone and then he had to move away for work, she got other men involved in my life. And I had wonderful men involved in my life. I had a stockbroker. Neighbor down the hall came in with his girlfriend and said, "Do you want to go horseback riding?" He's taking me horseback riding. I don't know if men would be comfortable doing that in today's age. So getting men involved in their lives, after school programs, Boy Scouts. I had a lot of wonderful men. I used to go camping, and there were men everywhere involved in my life. And I worry that a lot of those institutions,
Yeah.
and also there's a reticence and a hesitance for men to get involved in a boy's life that isn't theirs, for fear they're going to be perceived as something's wrong with them.
I was thinking that. So if we have less men in the home raising the children, and then we go to school, and the stat says that 72% of teachers in middle school are women as well. There's no men at school either. It's no wonder that boys are struggling so severely at such a young, early age for so many reasons, because one would assume that they're being socialized in the same way as girls. I'm seeing,
Okay.
I've got a mother at home, don't have a father. I've got women at school, don't have male teachers. I mean, that's a controversial thing to say. I'm sure it used to be, but I think people are waking up a little bit now.
We need more male teachers. There's more female fighter pilots per capita than male kindergarten teachers. There's an absence. There are some boys, not some, there are millions of boys in America whose first male role model is a prison guard.
Yeah.
And there're just no men in their lives.
Ooh.
After school programs being canceled, no women, very, very few men, K through 12. Dad's not around. There are literally communities. You read articles about it where it's like, where are the men?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Where are they?
Online.
Doesn't look like they're in work.
The,
They're not in college.
the reality is there just aren't, for a lot of reasons, a host of reasons, a lack of male involvement in kids' lives is a big, big factor leading to this. There are other factors, there's socioeconomic factors, there's biological factors, there's a lack of vocational training, there's outsourcing of many of the jobs that made a man's path to the middle class viable. I mean, you want to talk about the UK, a big problem is a lack of growth.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of income opportunities for a young man who's not exceptional. And what we've seen in the US is essentially, if you look at our economic policies and college, it's never been better to be remarkable. Like if you're in the top 10%, if you're a high school class, you're going to make more money than the top 10% did 10, 20, 30. If you end up at Google, you're going to make, a kid at Google who's amazing, computer science degree, can make millions of dollars by the time they're 30. But I can prove to every one of us mathematically that 99% of our children are not in the top 1%. And our economic policies have basically said that school and college is meant to identify a super class of 1%ers that we're going to try and turn into billionaires, instead of figuring out the infrastructure and the programs to ensure the bottom 90 have a shot at being at the top 10. And one of the stats is just around college acceptance. When I applied to UCLA, the acceptance rate was 76%. Now it's 9%. I was unremarkable for whatever reason, prefrontal cortex, single mother, whatever you want to call it. But back then they had the mission and the charge to let in unremarkable kids. And that's no longer the case, because America's superpowers are optimism. And we all believe our kids in that top 1%. And the reality is they're not. Or people think, I like an economy where you can make $1 billion because that's going to be me one day. So they have ignored the fact that we are crowding more and more prosperity and opportunity into the remarkable. And for me, it comes down to what do we want in America and the UK? Do we want a super class of billionaires, or do we want a society?
I've always said that I've said that my channel isn't about the high value men. It's about average men, because we are. I hear it more and more, especially in social media. We are constantly focusing on the 6-figure men. We're constantly focusing on the high value men. We are ignoring average men. I'm sorry. Majority of people in this world will forever be average. It is the way of life. Not everyone can be a king. Not everyone can be an emperor. Not everyone can be whatever, an elite. Anything. Most people are average. And average people, and in particular, average men, are being ignored. That's why I've said this countless times before, where I want to gear my content to my point of view, because I believe I'm average. I definitely live the mindset of I'm average at best. That doesn't mean that I think less of myself. I have a high level of self-respect. It's just, I know I'm average. I'm not delusional. And we've built a society where we are looking down on average people, particularly average men.
Operating system that gives unremarkable people a shot of being in the top 10%. It's become winner take all. And we have purposely created a set of economic and educational policies that crowd a massive amount of prosperity into the top 1%. And we have opted for it because we believe we have a shot at being in that top 1%.
I love that because I think the winner takes all applies to a lot of different things. So I bet the top 10% of Americans now are healthier than they've ever been, while the rest of the country
100%.
has never been healthy.
Best
never
healthcare in the
been less
world if you're in the
healthy.
top 10%.
Yeah. Or in marriages, the top marriages today are the best marriages of all time, yet we have declining marriage rates. So we're nearing the lowest rate of marriage that we've ever had in American history. So most people or fewer people are getting married, but if you're, two college graduates who get married in your 30s, you might have an even stronger bond than people in the past. But that is a small group at the top.
Marriage has become a luxury item.
Yeah.
If you're in the top quintile of income earning households, you're 75% get married. If you're in the bottom quintile, only 20. If you're in the lower quintile of income earning men, only 1 in 4 chance of getting married.
And this has huge impact on our society because we know that married people are healthier, they're wealthier, they live longer. When couples are married, they actually have lower rates of child poverty. And so this has huge implications for our society if we're having fewer marriages, especially when you think about having fewer babies.
I want to get into dating and marriage and love and all those things. One of the things that really shocked me as I was preparing for this conversation was this graph, because this isn't the narrative that we hear. Can you both see this one? This is the reverse gender gap, gender pay gap graph.
Right.
And it shows that young women are now out earning young men. That's not what I heard. In terms of, like, if I log onto social media, we've been trying to fight the gender pay gap, but to see that young men are now falling behind, both in education, both in unemployment. Young men face higher unemployment, nearly twice the rate of women. Looking at the early developmental stats, this graph was horrifying. I actually couldn't believe that was true, that young boys are struggling so much in education. But then
They showing you, this is the thing. No, I've said this before. We constantly focus on, feminism, women's rights to what? Men. Men are suffering, not women. Women are not suffering. It's men. Women needs to fight for what? What right do women need to fight for? Nothing. Nothing. It's like, this is the thing where women never understand. It's top tier men, the CEOs, which are very small percent of men. The top percent of men, the 6 figures, the 7 figures, whatever. The 6-figure men, the CEOs, the top. Then all women, then average men are all at the bottom. Average men they're doing worse. They're at the bottom.
and to see also that it's reflected in
So that graph shows that boys age 16 to 24 are making 10% less in full-time employment than women. And so it is true that we're seeing a reverse income graph. But what we do need to talk about is even when women make more in their 20s, that changes around age 30.
And they have kids.
When they have kids,
Yeah.
right? It's like this meteorite hits
Yeah.
and there's this huge burden placed on women. And I think that's a big part of the conversation that we'll talk about when we talk about dating is women still feel like they have to have, do all the household chores and raise the kids, but suddenly they have to earn a full-time income too.
100%.
And so many of the gender roles are changing. And so, yes, that graph is true. We have seen since 2020 that there's a shift, but I don't want to just say, women are making more in perpetuity, because as soon as there's kids involved, they pay the price.
Do you know you said that women feel the need to then also earn a career and all those things? Where did that come from?
Well, there's this idea of hypergamy. So traditionally, women seek partners who have more economic or social status than they do. And for most of human history, this worked because men had the resources. And so there was sort of this arrangement where women could often marry someone who was more educated or earned more. But over the last 50 years, that's really changed. And so what I'm seeing in my work, working one-on-one with women, is that when they say that there aren't enough good guys to go around, that's actually true. So we now have this huge
That is not true. This is a thing where that is not true. What is more true is that there are not enough attractive good guys to go around. Personal opinion, and she's not showing any stats to that. She's not showing any study to that. Good guy? No, there are plenty of good men. Problem is, they're not plenty of attractive good men. And attractive can be good looks, can be, financial. Those are things that women are attracted to. Good does not mean that, you have to be 6-figure man. No. So those are different. So being a good man, there are plenty of that. There are plenty of good men. There's just, in women's eyes, there are just not enough attractive good men.
dating gap where we have these high-performing, high-earning women that have done the work and gone to therapy and work out, and they're ready for their great partner, but they're not able to find enough guys who are available. And if this is a problem now with the
Again, there are enough available men. There are enough. There are more than enough. Just not enough attractive available men. That's the thing.
Women I work with in their 30s, we are going to be facing a much more severe crisis 10, 15 years from now. So currently,
In the UK, women made up 57% of higher education students, while in the US, men represented 44% of young college students in 2020, down from 47% in 2011.
60% of college enrollment is women, but soon it's going to be for every 2 women that graduate, it'll be 1 man. So that means half of those women will not have a guy who graduated from college. And so this is a crisis because these women are saying, okay, if you cannot be the provider, then you need to be offering more. Emotional intelligence is the new currency in dating. But these guys were raised not to be emotionally intelligent, not to give emotional support, but to be a provider. And so they've been chasing this lion. I'm going to hunt for this lion of being a provider. But suddenly they're told you need to hunt for a tiger, which is emotional intelligence. They don't have the skills to do that. And so women have raised the bar in terms of what they need from men, while men are continuously falling behind.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's some nuance around the pay thing. So the data I've seen is that women under the age of 30 in urban areas are now making more money. But to your point, the moment they have kids, where corporate America has really failed is it hasn't figured out a way to maintain a woman's professional trajectory once she decides to deploy her ovaries and have kids. And there's some data saying, okay, 2/3 of divorce can be reverse engineered to the man starting to make less money. When the woman in the relationship starts making more money, they become twice as likely to get divorced, 3 times as likely to use ED drugs because the guy loses a sense of purpose and self-esteem. What gets lost in that data is the reality is if a woman is stepping up and stepping into the economic void and being more economically, being a greater economic contributor,
Yo, Apocalypse, what's up, my man?
then logically it would make sense that men need to step up logistically. And I think what a lot of women are saying is like, okay, I'm not getting anything. You're no longer a provider. And by the way, you haven't filled that void. You haven't made up the delta. So there's some nuance around it. What also I think is important to say is that if women are better students and showing the discipline and the skills to go to college in an information economy and making more money, then okay, good on them. Just as for whatever reason, men made more money. Maybe it wasn't fair, but it's not a crime against humanity if women have the skills to make more money. What happens though is the second order effects that you're talking about, and that is, we don't like to talk about this, 75% of women say that economic viability is hugely important in a mate. Only 25% of men. For men, it's not a criteria. For women, it is. And Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast, he has this great stat, or he calls it the high heels effect. And that is 50% of women say they won't date a man shorter than them. I'm curious what you think, but I think it's more like 80%. I think it's an embarrassing thing to say because just instinctively, women feel like they'll be vulnerable during gestation and they want someone they think physically could protect them. I just think it's hardwired into them even if they don't know it. Women metaphorically are getting taller every year, and women made horizontally and up and men horizontally and down.
Right.
And when the pool of horizontal and up keeps shrinking, they just have, so this notion, a ton of great women, where are the men? Or there's no men. There's a lot of men, just not men they'd want to date.
Right.
And then
Exactly.
you speedball it with the guys who are in the top 10% can engage in Porsche polygamy. They can get a date every goddamn night, which does not encourage long-term or very good behavior. So the guys they all want are not incented to enter.
Exactly. This is the thing where we don't talk in reality. Why do average men want to be in marriages? Because honestly, that is reality. Average men, it is hard to get a date. Hard to get a date. So average men, yes, they want to be married so they don't have to be in the rat race that is dating. But guess what? The men that women generally want nowadays, he don't give a shit about marriage. Because to him, I had a friend who honestly, he's a player. He told me that every week he had a date. Every week he had a date. That's why honestly, he's not really necessarily the settled down type of guy. He is in a relationship now, but like every time he talks to me, he's like, I wish I was single. I wish I was single. Because for him, being in a relationship is meaningless. What is he getting out of a relationship that he couldn't get when he was single? I mean, girls wanted him. He had fun. Same thing. He had no problems. And women can't understand. Logically, why would the athlete, the entertainer, the CEO settle down for only you? Why? There is nothing you could give him that other women can't. Oh, emotional support. Every woman can give him emotional support. And a man doesn't need emotional support 24/7. He doesn't. Oh, what can you give him? Loyalty. He can get that from any woman. And he honestly, why would he care about loyalty? Why does he care about loyalty when honestly, he's sleeping with a bunch of women every night, every week? He don't care about loyalty. You know, there's honestly nothing any woman can give top tier men that he's not getting from every woman. So it's just how the world works. You want top tier men? Guess what? You will have to share him. You will have to share them. This is the thing where, Fresh and Fit, all these other podcasts, they talk about high value men. There's truth in what they say. There's truth in what they say because they talked about those type of men. I mean, yes, if you could find a faithful man, you're lucky, but that is that's a rare thing. Yes, I mean, like, again, I know plenty of men like that.
Into long-term relationships, and the bottom half of men are literally shut out of the mating market. And we always kind of, and this goes to your bailiwick, kind of portray men as the predators and the idiots, and they just got their act together. There's something strange going on in that is online dating. When a woman can go out with a guy, a high status male, and I'll put forward this thesis and I want you to respond to it. She can have sex with him, which gives her the impression that's her weight class for a relationship, but he's not interested in a relationship. And then she basically decides the bottom 90 are no longer in her weight class. And you can't tell a woman to lower her expectations, but the reality is, and what the data I've seen on dating apps is that all of the women want the same few guys and they shut out the rest.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things I'll respond to there. So one, going back to the income graph, I want to just call out that yes, right now in a few urban markets, women are making more than men. So women in DC and New York under 30 are making more than men on average, but in most situations, men are still making more than women, but we're talking about a projection. Going back to the dating research. So yes, it's exactly as you described. What we have right now is there's fewer and fewer men that are hypergamous mates for women. So if there's a much smaller pool of guys, then what you have is you have a bunch of women competing for the same men, and then a bunch of guys get ignored. But what I also see is that those top guys are having a hard time deciding. So I feel like in my coaching practice as a dating coach, I'm working with a lot of women who say, what do I do? I've changed my profile the way you said I should. I took your class, but I still feel like there's just not enough great guys. And then I work with these CEO men who are having such a hard time choosing. And so I think
This is a thing where women can't realize. If you want to date a man that is particularly top tier, like I want a man that makes six figures. Women have to understand, all women want a man to make six figures. So imagine this. You have to think to yourself, would a king be faithful? Would a king be faithful? If in your mind you think, which whatever ridiculous logic you think, a king would be faithful, then you know what? You have entered the war of delusion. Now, if you think logically and you've seen through history, you know that a king would never be faithful. So why would you think top tier men would be faithful? That's why, queens or concubines, all these types of women that go for kings, they know that I'm getting with this man for whatever particular reason. You should know that, you know what? This man will love me, will cherish me, will spoil me, but he won't be faithful to me. You will have to share him.
we really have this exacerbated problem where so many women are competing for the same men, and then a bunch of guys are getting ignored. And then what ends up happening is, where do those guys go? And they go online. That's what you
They go
see.
to porn.
They go to porn or they go to Reddit. I mean, I love Reddit, but they're really going to some of these red-pilled communities. And so what
Yeah.
you're seeing now is just men really opting out of society. So when you go back to that stat, 1 in 7 young men in the UK is NEET, not in employment, education, or training. They have just opted out. And as Scott says, there's nothing scarier than a single man, a young single man. And so we are just creating a lot of these angry young single men who are saying, well, this is rigged against me. And so that's why I am worried about the rise of people like Andrew
This is a thing where, I guess let's start.
Tate. And if we wonder, where are the dads, where are the men? Well, men are finding these father figures, but they're finding them online, and they're not the father figures that I would choose for the majority of men. And so I'm really worried about this because I feel
Here's the thing where why I particularly will say what I say. Because here's the thing where I honestly believe that a lot of younger men need to understand. One of my closet homies, Doug Superman, wear suits, switch up once he hit the club, but he was ghetto as fuck when he really. That's interesting. But this is the thing where this is why I've said this, that I wish a lot of young men, like in these communities, like the incel stuff, or a lot of these men that are angry about women. What I really want to let these young men understand is that you need to improve yourself for you. Be the best version of yourself so you can find happiness for yourself. What I mean? Because here's the thing. If your goal is a woman, well, yes, the US is, they may have this thing where you are too below him, you are not worthy of the women in the West. Fine. Fuck it. Okay. But that don't mean that the rest of the world is shut out to you. What I say is that don't become women hating. Don't become women hating. Please don't. What you do is that you understand that, you know what? Fine. Women around me find me unattractive in whatever thing, looks or financial, it is what it is. But what you will do is still try your best to be the best version of yourself. Financially, mindset, body, mentally, whatever. And then understand that, you know what? The rest of the world is open to you. This is why I don't mind men doing passport bros. But you have to strengthen your mindset, because if you become a hateful man, a man that hates women in the West, I don't hate women. Regardless of what people may think of my content, I don't hate women. I hate, people that are not, don't understand, that doesn't understand accountability. I hate, and in particular, I hate women that, I don't hate women, but I hate people that are hypocrites, delusional, don't understand accountability. That's what I hate. Okay? The mindset, not the person itself. If you become a man that, not really hating on women, you have that mindset where if you go to, let's say, another country, you won't be a toxic man. You will just be able to find, if you become the best version of yourself, you'll be able to find a woman that, may fit, you may fit her whatever attraction level where you're financially attractive to her. Okay? I believe you, Apocalypse.
Feel like women are saying, guys, you need to step up because I can provide and I don't need that from you. And guys are not prepared to rise to the occasion.
What are women looking for? Scott talked about height.
Yeah. So I would say, I work at Hinge, but I do think that apps have perpetuated this issue around height, because if you can set your height filter to something, then you might set it higher. And then it's as if you have the dating app as a club and you're literally having bouncers that prevent a bunch of guys from even getting into the club. So many women in the US set their height filters at 6 feet, but only 14% of men in the US are 6 feet or taller. So what happens to the other 86% of men? And women are saying, where's my guy? It's like, well, he's not even showing up on your app. And so a huge thing that I push women to do is to change their height filters and just say, there is nothing that proves that you're going to have a successful long-term relationship if the guy is higher. I'm married to a short king. I love it. I feel like I really found this gem. And I think that so many women are missing out on great potential partners because of things like height.
Scott's point as well about they will date one of the men in the top 10%.
Yeah.
Sleep with him potentially, and then that kind of adjusts their standards, and they expect all other men to meet that standard, but there isn't enough men to meet that standard, is there?
I haven't specifically heard that. I mean, there is a lot of evidence around assortive mating, that people sort of have an internal sense of how attractive they are and that they end up with someone similar to that. But assortive mating is different than hypergamy, which is really this idea, as Scott said, that women tend to date horizontally and up and men date horizontally and down. So if you have 2/3 of women who are college grads and 1/3 of college grads who are men, and some of them are going to date women without college degrees, you truly do have this dating crisis where there's just not enough men to meet this hypergamous mating.
Again, you can't tell women to lower their expectations, but this is the reality. When you ask a man if you could have a woman who had 80% of everything you wanted, 75% say, yeah, I'm on board.
Mm-hmm.
When you say to a woman, a man has 80% of what you want, 75% say that's not enough. But if you, but even look at the media.
Right.
What does the media tell a woman to do? He's out, but he didn't open your door.
He's not nice to his parent. You walk right out on that man. Like it's literally every.
Guess what? Okay. Just recently, I asked a woman, why is she single? I mean, perfectly good answer. I mean, perfectly logical question. It's not like, oh, I'm bashing her. I'm just like, oh, what? How's? No, I said, how is your single journey? I mean, how is your dating life? Then she said, oh, I didn't think that I have to explain why am I single. Block me, ghost me. Said that and then blocked me. Seriously? It's like you can't even get to know people. You can't even ask questions. This is the thing where, again, this is women's like, they will look for any opportunity to disqualify you because you're not good enough. Barely know the person, boom, you're gone. It's like, seriously? You want men to not act? It's like a little while back, there are TikTok videos of women asking, oh, why aren't men asking more questions from women? Guess what? Why? Why aren't men asking questions to women? Because you don't know what is a good question for women. Because you can't read her mind. You don't know what you say will trigger her. So what's the best thing a lot of men would do? Just talk about himself. Just talk about himself. That's the thing. You don't know how many times a woman have ghosted me, like stop talking to me, block me, whatever, when I'm asking her questions. Asking her questions about herself. Or just talking to her. This is why a lot of men just like, I'm just gonna talk about myself. And then let her decide, let her ask me questions, or let her start kind of conversations. Because honestly, that is the insanity of women. Miss Sandra.
Piece of media is you don't need him. You're a strong, independent woman. Pull the ripcord. You're out. And it is the basic kind of communication around this is you are a strong, independent, powerful woman. That is wonderful. And quite frankly, you don't need the imperfect man. And they're just not connecting. I read that on Tinder, a man of average attractiveness has to swipe right 200 times to get one coffee. And then 4 of those 5 coffees will ghost him. They will decide they don't want to meet him or they won't show up. That means a guy of average attraction.
That is 100% how it goes with men. Average men. Average attractive men. This is the thing why a lot of men are just doing the numbers game. Just swipe. Don't matter if she's ugly. Don't matter if she's fat. Don't matter whatever. Just keep on swiping. Just keep on swiping. Because that's the life of average men.
Attractiveness has to swipe right 1,000 times to get one coffee. Now, what does that tell that guy? Women don't value me. Women make me feel rejected. And then they go online and they see these misogynists telling them it's not your fault. And these men become much more prone to misogynistic content, much more prone to nationalistic content, blaming other people for the lack of economic opportunity. They start sequestering from society. I worry that we are literally evolving a new species of asexual, asocial male. And if a man by the age of 30 hasn't either lived with someone or married someone, there's a 1 in 3 chance he's gonna have a substance abuse problem.
Wow.
In addition, it goes so much deeper than that because if they don't develop the skills, the reason romantic comedies are 2 hours, not 15 minutes, is this shit is hard. Like finding an attractive, intelligent woman, generally speaking, 75% of people who've been married longer than 30 years say, in the beginning, one was much more interested than the other. And it was almost always the man. Women are much choosier. The basis of evolution is seed trying to get everywhere, men, and women deploying a much finer filter to select the strongest, smartest, and fastest speed. So men need an environment to demonstrate excellence. And you hear these women talk about it. He was kind. He was good at work. I liked the way he smelled. He was funny. Where do men demonstrate excellence? When they're not going to college, they're not going into an office because of remote work. Where do they're not going to church, they're not going to temple. Where does a woman have the opportunity to fall in love other than these baseline metrics? And you were talking about women say, you've seen these TikToks, over $100,000, that's not unreasonable, and over 6 feet, that's 2.2% of the male population. So where do they fall in love? Where can a man demonstrate excellence? It used to be go to temple, 7 single women, 7 single men, and they kind of pair it off and worked it out. And online dating, similar to online e-commerce, online rentals, it's created a winner take most, if not all, environment. And it's basically been amazing for attractive guys attractive, wealthy guys, tall, wealthy guys. It's been amazing for them. For all the other guys, it's been a disaster, and it's been made it mildly shittier for every woman. The digitization of mating, I believe, has been a disaster. It's been bad for women. It's been disastrous for men.
I want to talk about how the genders seem to be separating in a lot of important ways. We know from research around political affiliation that women are now, on average, 30% more liberal than men. So they are definitely experiencing political polarization. Then, for the first time in history, more men are attending church than women. And when I started this research, I really came at it from this point of, is it just me or are there not as many eligible guys? But when I dug into this, I found that both genders really feel misunderstood. And so I asked men and women who has more power in relationships. So equal amount.
I always like to clarify there are plenty of eligible men. Plenty. There's not enough attractive eligible men. Because the clear distinction is important. Because saying there's not enough eligible men is clearly saying that there's not enough men to go around. There are plenty. There are plenty of good men, eligible men to go around. There's just not enough attractive eligible men in women's eyes.
Men and women said, oh, we have the same amount of power, 42% of that. But then what was so interesting is that 46% of men said women have more power and 46% of women said men have more power. So there's this huge feeling of, oh, the other gender has all of this power. And when I spoke to people, I want to tell you about 3 dating paradoxes that I saw. So the first dating paradox for men is this idea that now that women are providers and do not need a man to take care of them financially, they really want guys to step up with emotional support. But here's the paradox. They were not raised and they don't know how to give that emotional support or emotional availability. So we know women, even if they have the same number of friends as guys, the women are talking to their friends much more often. Women speak to their kids, even starting at a very young age. They use more emotional language with their daughters and their sons. So constantly we have this feeling where we're asking men to do something when they don't have the skills. I was talking to my friend David, and he said women are in graduate school when it comes to emotional conversations and guys are in 3rd grade. The other part of the paradox is that women are asking men to be more emotionally open, but then they get shamed when they do that. So we have this great quote from Brene Brown where she says, we beg guys to open up, we beg them to let us in, and then when they do, we can't stomach it. And I heard that over and over in my research. There's this quote where a guy says, a woman.
That mindset, okay? What she just said. Also imagine, I think, personal opinion, I think more and more, I'm not saying there is a lot, I'm saying it's increasing where, yes, more and more men are being emotionally intelligent, taking up the burden of the household, of the childcare. And I think those type of men, because I hear more and more stories of men being the cooker, men cooking in relationships, men cleaning in relationships, predominantly more than a woman. Cooking more in the relationship, cleaning more in the relationship, taking care of the children more in the relationship. And I'm hearing those are divorces. Those men get cheated on more. Because here's the thing where, yes, women want that. What they say they want that, okay? But in practice, women are finding that more unattractive. Going for the men that are typical, stereotypical alpha men, okay? Strong, masculine, stereotypical, the masculine men. And I'm hearing that more and more. I'm not saying that that is a big thing. I mean, it's like studied or whatever. I'm saying that I'm hearing it more and more stories like that, where there is an increase of men trying to be more domesticated in the sense where they're taking care more of the kids, they're taking care more of the household, and yet these men are, the stories I'm hearing, are getting cheated on more, getting left by what women deem as more masculine men.
Women would rather see me die on the white horse than fall off of it. And so there's a sense that I have to be perfect. I have to be the masculine and the feminine, but I don't have the skills to do that. And women say that they want these guys to be emotional, but as soon as they show emotionality, it can freak those women out. So one guy that I spoke to for this said, I went on a few dates with this woman. At some point, I told her that my mom had had a suicide attempt. And the next day she texted me and said, I'm sorry, I can't see you. I cannot process your emotional trauma for you. And so guys are getting a lot of mixed messages. We want you to be feminine. We want you to support us. But when you do, it freaks us out. And so we don't want that. And digging into the research, and I want to look into this more, I think it's that a lot of women want emotional support They want you to support them in their emotional journeys, but they're not as ready to have you open up in your emotional journey.
Can I put forward a thesis? And I want you to.
Guess what? A man that supports a woman in her emotional journey, he's a man that is emotional himself. He's a man that's emotionally intelligent, emotionally expressive. So a man, because here's the thing, women are typically emotionally intelligent, emotionally expressive. So they want a man to support them on their emotional journey. Guess what? If a man, supports women on her emotional journey, he himself is emotionally expressive, emotionally intelligent. So he would expect it to be reciprocal.
Respond to it because I haven't done the research. In marketing, we call it consumer dissonance, what people say they want and then what they actually buy. And what women say they want is an emotionally in touch man, and what they want is a masculine man. And that they will articulate what they want in a man, and includes being more emotionally available, and then they want to have sex with a traditional masculine man. And what I hear from a lot of, and this is anecdotal.
This is exactly what I just said, right? With the whole men are more domesticated, and yet they are getting cheated on with men that are what women deem as typically, stereotypically masculine. Yes, women say that they want these types of men, but in practice, not saying all, but it's happening more and more. In practice, women find these men less attractive. They find these men great to settle down for or settle for, but they find these men not particularly attractive.
Evidence in pulse marketing, and you tell me what the data says. But there's just so many single women in my age group, and it feels like there's literally no men in my age group. As bad as it is for people in their 20s and 30s, try being a woman in your 50s trying to date, right? And they tell me the same thing. These are liberal, progressive, educated women. They say, by the way, I like a manly man.
Yeah.
And they say it under their breath. So there's what supposedly is stated around, I need more emotional availability, someone who's touch with their feelings. But what the research shows is they want a guy with facial hair, who's still, women are still very attracted to traditional masculine attributes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just in such a hard moment because you have women who are saying, I don't want to date a guy who earns less than me. And you might think, okay, well, the data hasn't caught up with the dating. If more women are in higher education and more women are earning more, then maybe you're going to be the one who earns more in your relationship. But what they feel like is projecting out, I'm going to end up doing most of the housework, most of the childcare. I might as well get a guy that can contribute financially. So they don't want to change their expectations around that. And so I think we truly are in a moment where women are being asked to do more masculine things and men are being asked to do more feminine.
Women are not being asked to do more masculine things. Women are choosing to be more masculine, doing more masculine things, focusing on their career, trying to go up the career ladder. Women are choosing it, not being asked. No man is asking a woman to focus on her career, to support him. No man is doing that.
Things.
Yo, why? What's up, my brother? Hope you had a good day.
And I think a lot of that is progress, but it also seems to be creating a lot of confusion in the dating world.
Yeah, it's sort of, I was just thinking, I coach a lot of young men, and occasionally women ask me for dating advice, and you coach, it sounds like a lot of both. And first thing I say to men is I ask them, like, would you want to have sex with you? All right. Are you in shape? What do you look like, Nate?
I do say this, that a lot of men need to think, what value would you bring to a woman? That's it. You have to, this is what's important, why I say self-reflection is important. What value would you bring for a woman? I'm doing well. You know, I'm just watching this video because I saved it. I wanted to check it out. So, you know, I'm doing well. It was a decent Sunday, so it's cool. No complaints, no special complaints. But yeah.
Do you have a plan? You don't have to be rich now, but do you have a plan? Right? Have you found means of being confident? Can you demonstrate kindness and excellence across anything? And the only advice I give women is second coffee. And that is, maybe it wasn't great. I mean, if you don't like the guy and you're just like turned off, fine. But if it was just okay,
maybe give it a second coffee.
I have a chapter in my book called Make the Second Date the Default.
Yeah.
And it's really because I feel like I won the lottery with my husband, but he is somebody that takes longer to open up and he's this slow burn. We met in college, we met again 7 years later, then we were friends for a year. And I feel like he's this incredible partner, husband, father, but I don't know that if we'd met just randomly on the first date that I would have gone on a second date. And so I
Yeah.
think people really do need to train themselves to look for these slow burns.
Logan, Scott said something there about what he thinks women want, which is these sort of
Yeah.
traditional masculine features. Is this what you see in the data?
What's hard is I think Scott's right about what people say they want versus so stated versus revealed preferences. So according to the research that I did, women are saying the number one thing that they're looking for is kindness and compassion. That's also what men are saying that they're looking for. So in many ways, this is great. People are looking for the same things, but I just feel like there's these huge disconnects now where people don't feel like they can get what they want.
Men are saying they want kindness and compassion.
I made them say, what are all the things that you care about? And then what is the number one thing that you care about? And kindness and compassion was first for both of them.
The stuff I've seen or the stuff I've read is that for women, and I've talked to men about this, number one
Mhm.
is they have to signal resources. And we don't like to say it out loud. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a Range Rover and a panel right now, but you have a plan,
Mhm.
right? You have your shit together. You go home at midnight when everyone's partying because you have to be up for work. You
Thank you. Thank you for lurking.
work out, which shows a level of discipline and that you can commit to something. You're in school. You've got a good job. This person is going to have resources. And I don't think that's changed a whole lot. I think a man's ability to signal future resources has gone down. I'm not sure it's become any less of a criteria. Number two is intellect.
Mhm.
And it's very instinctual because if you make good decisions for the tribe, your kids are more likely to survive.
Mhm.
Someone who's smart is more likely to take care of your offspring than someone who's stupid. What's interesting, and I love this, is the fastest way to communicate intellect is humor.
Mhm.
And I joke, and this is bad, but I say, this is my impression of a woman. I'm laughing, I'm naked. And that is, I've always thought if a guy can make a woman laugh,
Yeah.
she will date him. And then the third thing,
I'm terrible
and
at
this
that.
is where guys screw up. This is what I tell a guy's secret weapon is. It's kindness. Women want to see that you are a good person. You treat service staff well. You're good to your parents. You have manners. You treat people well, even with no reciprocal expectation, because they know that a kind person, if and when she's vulnerable and needs help, and maybe isn't bringing as much to the table for certain periods of time, that this is a kind man. And, sure, you want to do your best to signal resources and have a plan. Sure, maybe you're smart, maybe you aren't. There's not a lot you can do there. But the secret weapon, I think, for men that they don't leverage, and I do think it's a practice, is to demonstrate kindness. And we don't talk about that enough as men. It's like, well, okay, and it's little things. Have good manners.
Mhm.
Be thoughtful. Follow up with people. And I think that, anyways, those are the three things that I have read women want in men.
Okay, there's so much there. So one is I do think we need a new definition for modern masculinity or mature masculinity or
The kindness thing is like, that's not easily demonstrated when, for most men, you don't even get to the first date. You'll be lucky if you get to the second date. So demonstrating kindness is an overtime kind of thing, in my personal opinion. I mean, tipping, like saying thank you, saying it's like, it's not the easiest thing to demonstrate necessarily. I mean, it's more personal interaction, and a lot of women wouldn't. They don't even. They don't. You don't even get past. You don't even get past the talking stage for a lot of men. So a lot of men don't even get past the talking stage. So, yeah.
evolved masculinity. And I think that that's why this moment feels so painful is that we don't have it. Because I agree with you. I don't think women are saying, I want a feminine man. I think they want a modern masculine man. And so that means somebody who is decisive and can provide, but also somebody who's able to communicate with them emotionally. And so one of the suggestions that I came here today to talk about is this idea of men's groups. So about a year ago, my friend David Clavins, who happens to be a world-class magician, came to my husband and said, I'm going to form this men's group. And so it's about 6 or 7 men and they meet together
Yo, Skull, what's up, my brother?
monthly, and they have served they have formed this council of peers. So every month that they get together, every guy sits down with post-it notes and says the 2 issues that are most pressing for him. So first of all, I think that that's a great way of doing it because it's actually that time to say, what am I struggling with? I think many people in their lives, maybe especially men, don't sit there and say, what's top of mind for me? So guys get the quiet time to do that. Then they go around in a circle, and whoever has the most pressing issue, they get to take their time. And some men might say, these are top of mind for me, but it's not a priority. I'll give the time to someone else. And each month, they talk about what's going on for them. they hold each other accountable. So month 3, they might say, hey, David, you've been talking about that for the last 3 months. Are you going to actually do
Good.
anything
I'm
about it?
glad.
And I love that these men have a masculine space to actually go through what's going on for them, because maybe they have wives and girlfriends they can go to. Maybe they don't. But I think it's a different type of advice that you get from a council of trusted peers. And I really do think that men's groups could change a lot of these issues, because I can sit here and say everybody should be in therapy. Guess what? Therapy is really expensive, and many insurance companies will not provide it, or there's a huge waiting list. And so if we just sit around for all these guys to go to therapy, that's not going to happen. But men's groups are a way that men can lead each other. They can provide this tribe of peers. And I have just seen so many changes in this group. So David told me his story where he had a lot of anger about his mom's debilitating illness, and he wasn't really experiencing it, and it was coming out as anger at his mom, but he wasn't conscious of that. But by getting the anger out in a safe place with men, the only place where he felt like he could truly be angry, he was able to get over it and to act.
You know what? I may want to do this. I may want to start this. Um, I think I want to start this. Uh, where I think I want to start this, a men's group, where I may do this where we set something up online where we're just talking, where a whole bunch of men are just talking about their issues, their thoughts, how they're feeling, whatever. A bunch of followers, whatever. Where we should set up. I want to set up a men's group. I want to set up a men's group where, yeah. Tell me what you guys think. Would you guys want to do this? Where, let's say, once a week or once a month, I will have a live where it's just, we are all just a bunch of the people in the chat, if they want to. We are just talking. We're just talking about how we're feeling, what are our thoughts, what's going on in our life. Like a men's group where we can express our emotions, express our thoughts, and say, just how we personally feel. Because I think not enough men are just talking about their day, talking about their thoughts, talking about how they're currently feeling. That was the fishing trip. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that. I may make a post on the channel, seeing if maybe a vote, seeing if people will like that idea. So I'm thinking about that.
Actually treat his mom with a lot more empathy. Or my husband has gone to the group and talked about ego stuff at work, or how hard the transition to becoming a parent has been. And I feel like the men in this group have grown so much over the 12 months that it's been happening that I just paid for my brother-in-law to be in a men's group. And I want there to be tons of men's groups, because I really feel like this isn't an issue that a therapist or a mom or I can really solve. I think men need to be solving this problem within themselves.
What you said is really powerful, because if you walk down the hallway at Stern, there's Golden Seeds, Women in Venture Capital, Black Women's Consulting Club. There are women's support groups. There's nothing for men. And these groups are really wonderful. Man Talks is one that I've been looking at, where they've said, let's get together and just be supportive of each other. And it's a fairly new phenomenon.
I think people are afraid of men gathering because traditionally bad things have happened in that.
Gangs.
Right. Gangs. I'm just thinking of like many situations in
That's
which, like,
funny.
if once there's a tiki torch, I want there to be some women there, right? Like, so there's a reason why people have been fearful of this. Or it's like when the whole world was a men's group, a men's club, you didn't need to have men's clubs.
Yeah.
But I think in this moment, this is a really powerful, organic, grassroots way for men to change. So I imagine that you have group chats with men that are your peers that you go to for advice. And I feel like there's men out there that don't have that. And we are meant to make decisions by getting advice from other people. I personally have a board of directors that in my life, when I'm going to make a big decision, I meet with them. So when I took my last job, when I decided to move, all these different things, I meet with my board of directors and I say, what am I not seeing? What are my blind spots? And they've given me a lot of good and hard advice. And I think we all need to be building our own board of directors. And for men, that might be this men's group.
Do you mind if I pause this conversation for a moment? I want to talk about our show sponsor today, which is Shopify. I've always believed that the biggest cost in
Guys in the group, and they actually had to talk about how they needed to be less funny because the humor was becoming a distraction. And somebody brought up, in their own male way. Like, I think that sometimes we're about to go deep and then someone makes a joke. And even though that joke was really good, we don't go back to where we were and we don't go as deep. So they actually work on being less funny in that group. But look at the work that you do. You sit for hours a week and you learn and you ask people questions and you're working on yourself. I'm not surprised that you have a group of peers that you can go to for that. But I would wager that the average man doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are going to be so many women who are listening and watching this and they're like, I want that for my husband.
What is the evolutionary basis for this? This is what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, did we lose the man's group at some point in our past? And is that why we're adding it back into our lives? Like, what used to do this job before?
So what I've heard, and I think evolutionary biology, you always have to take certain things with a grain of salt because people can kind of explain away anything with it. But it's that a lot of times men were sitting next to each other and they were having these conversations on the savannah. And that's often why like guys prefer to do activities side by side and not facing each other. And so you had men who were in conversation with their peers or,
And outside.
And outside.
Fishing.
Yeah.
Hey, heard you getting divorced.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or it's like, why it's so good to have conversations in the car. I feel like you had a lot of men that were in groups at church. You had men who were in the Elks Club. You had veterans that were meeting. We actually feel like this is a time where much fewer men are getting together. And this is all of the amazing research that's happening now around loneliness, is that the average young guy is spending many fewer hours a week with their peers face to face. So even though a guy might be catching up with his friend playing video games, I just don't think that that's the same thing. And so I feel like we need this in-person time with our friends to develop these relationships. And instead we have people on TikTok, people on Twitch watching other people live their lives.
You brought up two interesting things. One is your friend group. I have a similar group. Same eight guys I lived with my freshman year at UCLA. For 30 or 40 years, we've been kind of constant contact, email now on WhatsApp. When your friend had something bad happen to him, I think for a long time, men have weighed in and showed empathy for each other. What none of my male friends have ever done, their friend group would say, is I've never heard one of my male friends go, I'm depressed. I'm just super fucking lonely and depressed. You just don't hear that from men. I'm struggling with anger. I'm all of a sudden I have erectile dysfunction. I've never heard one of my male friends, when their mom dies or they get divorced, we weigh in with a lot of empathy, but you never hear them really open up because men are worried that if we display weakness, another man might kill us and take our shit from us, or the women aren't going to want to have sex with us. So there's still, I think, a huge inability for men to proactively talk about how they're really feeling. And then you talked about a board of directors. A great board of directors for a man in his 20s, not unfortunately, is a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I'll just use personal experience. I had a great girlfriend when I was 24, and she basically said to me, if you don't stop getting high every night, I'm going to stop having sex with you. That was very motivating for me. I really liked being with a partner. Without the guardrails of a romantic relationship, I think men are just, I don't want to say lost, but women create more social connections outside of a romantic relationship. And sometimes that absence of a romantic relationship, they pour that energy into friendships and their professional life, whereas men start pouring it into video games and Reddit and porn. So the fact that only 1 in 3 men in America under the age of 30 has a girlfriend and 2 in 3 women has a boyfriend, you think, well, that's mathematically impossible. It's not, because women are dating older because they want more economically and emotionally viable men. If I hadn't been in relationships that were great guardrails for me in terms of my own behavior, my own ambition, men need, without the prospect or the existence of a romantic relationship, men have worse outcomes than women who don't have. And do you agree with what I'm saying? Does the research bear that out?
It's interesting because part of me where my head goes is like, are you asking women to do the emotional labor of raising men? And when you phrase it like that, it sounds really negative.
Yeah.
But from anecdotal experience from my own life, I've been with my husband for 10 years. I think we both really shaped each other. But like even yesterday, he texted me and he's like, I'm going to get an Uber instead of renting a car at the airport. You've taught me how to be such a savvy traveler. Like that's a small example, but it's like you really do influence each other. And I think sometimes about my single friends and how they go to bed at night and they don't have a person next to them to give them advice and to listen to them talk about their day. And I think that when we're in long-term relationships, there's an element of raising each other and building memories together and making each other better and having that
1
investment.
+ 1 = 3.
Right. And that's why all these women that come to me and all these men that are looking for love, that want relationships, and something is happening right now where the gap just seems to be widening and these relationships aren't happening. And this is even true in teenage relationships. So it used to be that for baby boomers and Gen X, 3/4 of men had a relationship in their teen years. And now it's under 50%. And so if you start building your relational skills at an early age, then you get better and better at dating over time. But if, as you said, by the time you're 30, you haven't been in a relationship, that's seen as a red flag to a lot of people. And so I think we have a problem now, but I'm really projecting that we're going to have a much greater problem in the future.
I think a real enemy of relationships and mating for people in their 20s that we haven't talked a lot about. I had Dr. Anna Lemke from Stanford on my pod talking about addiction, and something we're just starting to come to grips with. And as I read more about it, I think porn is really,
Let's talk about porn.
Well, personal experience. I used to go on campus. The only reason I graduated from UCLA, I graduated with a 2.27 GPA. If I graduated with a 1.97, I wouldn't have graduated.
Mhm.
Not the only motivator, but a real motivator for me was the prospect of meeting someone. I could go onto campus and there might be a chance I'd meet friends, be social, and possibly meet a potential romantic partner. It was very motivating. And if I'd had porn on this
Right.
and on my screen, always available, I'm not sure I would have gone on campus. And I would have spent a lot more time at home. And unfortunately, the deepest pocketed, most talented companies in the world are trying to convince young people that they can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen with an algorithm. And what I say to young men I coach is that I'm not going to tell you not to consume porn, but try to modulate it, because I think that fire of wanting to meet someone and wanting to demonstrate excellence and having perseverance and enduring rejection and getting your shit together and dressing well and smelling nice and showering, for God's sakes, that mojo, that desire is incredibly important for society. And we're taking young men's mojo away with frictionless, open access, on-demand porn.
Have you seen these no-fap communities?
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yes.
Okay, so I was listening to this episode of Modern William with Chris Williamson, and he was interviewing Hamza, who was self-identifying as a former red-pilled person. And he was talking about how much it changed his life to try to enter the no-fap community.
Which means
No masturbation. And so I do think that porn is a huge problem. My first job out of college was running the porn pod for Google. So what this meant was that we would sell ads for the porn advertisers. This team does not exist anymore. This was a long time ago. My parents were like, I sent you to Harvard and now you're selling ads for pornography. But when I look back, I'm like, what was I perpetuating? Because I feel like there's just so many problems with what technology is doing in terms of replacing human connection. So let's just project out. ChatGPT is already amazing. I'm currently in my Google feed getting ads for Replica, and the ads say, get your perfect AI boyfriend, always there for you.
Yeah.
So you think about the fact that real life relationships are messy. I tell my husband on a weekly basis, please throw your contact lens in the garbage. And every week we have a disagreement about that. Well, guess what? Your online girlfriend, she doesn't nag you. She doesn't tell you to pick up your socks. She only tells you how great you are
No.
and always tells you, that you're doing the right thing and how was your day. Then you insert sex robots. Okay, so you have your emotional needs met, you have your sexual needs met. Maybe you're watching porn while engaging with your sex robots. Why would you want to go through the very challenging potential rejection of real life relationships? And I feel like if all these things come to pass, which it seems very likely that they will, we are truly in a crisis moment when it comes to birth rate and future generations.
And it impacts them. It'll impact the economy because the skills you have to develop to be successful in the mating market are life skills.
Mhm.
You have to be able to endure rejection. You have to have a sense of humor. You have to be able to read the room. Show me a guy who's good in a bar. I'll show you a guy who'd probably be good in a boardroom. And the skills you have to develop as a young man, if you want a romantic and a sexual relationship, pay dividends the rest of your life. And if you don't develop those skills, I think it impacts your life across a bunch of dimensions.
This is something I'm worried about for Gen Z in general. So I did a ton of research with post-pandemic Gen Z daters, men and women in the UK and the United States. And such a big theme that came out of it was that they don't have rejection resilience. And I
Yeah.
think that we hear this in many aspects of life. So someone that I'm close to, he's the former dean of Brown, he's a professor there. And he was talking about how it used to be that his office hours were empty and that's when he could do his reading or play solitaire. But now students come basically saying, tell me exactly what's going to be on the test. Tell me exactly what to write in my paper, because they are not willing to fail. I have friends who are managers at Google and they give somebody feedback in a Google Doc and the person is crying because they take that as extreme rejection. And so if you don't have the resilience built up
100%.
to fail, then you are not going to take risks. And everything in life worth having is worth taking a risk for. And so I feel that I have my dream job. Nobody messaged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, Logan, do you want to study dating and relationships? No, I invented this job and now I get to have it. And same thing is true with relationships. It's not about waiting for the perfect person to show up. It's about becoming a great person who somebody else chooses and going after what you want.
I want to talk about all of this and specifically offer some solutions to the young, to the parents, to the boys, to the teens, to the men that are listening. We had a young man actually write in on this subject. And he said, I've suffered with crippling loneliness. And so I've spent over $1,000 hiring women online just to talk to me and to keep me company. On top of that, I've spent several $1,000s more engaging in other business with them. After doing this for nearly a year now, I still feel incredibly unfulfilled. And on the subject of porn, 30% of internet traffic is now related to porn, with about 80% of that porn traffic coming from men and 20% coming from women. I actually had a conversation on this podcast before about porn. And funnily enough, the top comment was, by the way, us women get porn addicted too, because it was a bit of a blind spot to me, but I think that's something that's worth acknowledging. And the stats are staggering in terms of how higher porn consumption correlates to higher probabilities of depression. What do you do about it? Like on an individual level, I get it. Try not to watch porn, but I mean, that doesn't seem like incredibly great advice because if you're lonely, you're not getting laid, no one wants to date you for all the reasons we talked about today. Restraint seems to be a pretty shitty
your son is struggling with this addiction, or with this, I guess that is something that I understand that probably a lot of men are struggling with, especially young men. This is a thing where I've said this. A lot of men are guideless and directionless. This is why I say to focus on trying to better yourself. The thousand of dollars you spend on women on OF to get to know you, to have sex with you. Instead of that, you could invest it, save it, put it in a high yield savings account. Buy things that would make you happy. Buy clothes that will make you look better. Do a hair, do I don't know, make a better haircut. Just do things to improve yourself instead of faking affection. Because at the end of the day, a lot of men need to understand that we are living in a world where less and less women need men. So we need to come your sack. Oh, you're crazy. A lot of men need to understand that we need to have a bit of a different focus, where we need to strive for the best for ourselves, not because we want a woman, which, at the end of the day, if you strive to be the best version of yourself, there is a high likelihood where you can be a good, partner to a woman if you're at the best of yourself. If you are at the best version of yourself. So that's one of the things why I say a lot of men need to focus on themselves.
I'll
Solution.
give this one to Scott.
Okay, so I coach young men. I take 2 to 3 on at any time. And I don't know if this is the right way, but it's my way. I'm like, you got to lean into your advantage. When you're our age, you have capital, you have more money than time. They have capital, they have a lot of time. And I ask them to unlock their screen. And I say to them, I gamble with options. I gamble. At my age, I still gamble. I preach about low-cost index funds and I buy call options. That makes no fucking sense. It's gambling, but I know it. I watch porn. I try and modulate my use so I can put the majority of my sexual energy into my partner, but I watch porn because I want them to not feel like I'm going to judge them. They unlock their phone. And I say, we're going to find 8 to 12 hours a week of time, of capital, and we're going to reinvest that capital in higher ROI investments. It is so easy to find 8 to 12 hours. I can sometimes find 7 hours or 15 hours just in TikTok.
You look at screen time.
I look at screen
Okay.
time and I say, all right, through with me.
Yeah.
We're going to find 8 to 12 hours. And then we're going to reinvest that capital in 3 investments. 1, we're going to start working out and getting fit. You're going to work out 3 times a week with weights. You should be able, the human male form is spectacular. You should be able to walk into any room under the age of 30 if you're a man and know that if shit got real, you could kill and eat everybody or outrun them. I need you to be strong. You're going to be more mentally healthy. You're going to be kinder. Look at the people who break up fights at bars. They're big, strong men. Look at the people who defend their country. You want to be strong as a man. It feels fucking amazing. Testosterone, your bone structure, your muscle mass, it's amazing. Lean into that. We're going to get strong. 2, you got to start making some money. And the kids, to be honest, the kids I'm coaching are really struggling. These are kids at home at the age of 23 with their mom, not getting along with their mom, nothing going on. If you have a phone, you can make money. I don't care if it's Lyft, TaskRabbit, because you get a taste for the flesh. And the way to start making a lot of money is to start making a little bit of money, because you start to figure out the economy. How could I make more money? Maybe at some point, could I buy a car and hire a driver to be an Uber? What is the way, could I get a certification in plumbing? You start figuring out and you start getting your greed glands get going. Oh my God, it's awesome to have money. I can go out. I can go to a concert. It gets those greed glands going. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to put ourselves in the company of strangers in the agency of something bigger than ourselves twice a week. Church group, softball league, nonprofit, charity, whatever it is. And then 3A, and I've just started doing this. I've only done it 2 times. And it's an exercise. And I say, and it goes to I think no is the way to success. Show me someone who's successful. I'm going to show you a shit ton of no's. I ran for sophomore, junior, senior class president, lost all 3 times, decided to run for senior class president, lost. I applied to 38 jobs. I got 1 offer, 9 schools, rejected by 7. I mean, my whole life has been about no. And that's why I'm successful, is I was always able to endure it. So I said to them, this is what I want you to do. I need you to go up to a stranger at wherever we're doing, church group, Riders Club, whatever it might be, education, continuing education. And you're going to ask them out for coffee. It's a friend. Hey, what are you doing? Do you want to watch the game? Do you want to watch the Liverpool game this weekend? Let's go to a bar. If it's a woman you might have an attracted to, hey, try and get a rap going. Would you like to have coffee? And here's the goal. The goal is no. and we're going to celebrate no. Because you're going to call me and I'm going to say, did you ask someone out for coffee or to a bar? And most likely they'll have said no. They'll be polite, they'll come with an excuse. And then I'm going to ask you if you're okay. And you're going to say yes. And that's the victory.
It's interesting because if you go on TikTok or if you go on,
I may have to do that more, or do that at all. I kind of, maybe I want to do that as an experiment. Go and just ask women out for a drink. If you want to get a coffee or a drink, I probably should do that more in real life, because that may be a good experience for me, because I do need to practice on, accepting no, the negative mentality. I do think that will help strengthen men's resolve, men's focus. So, yeah, that might be a good thing.
X, you'll find a lot of videos of women filming themselves as a guy inappropriately came and made a gesture to them and then like publicly shaming them on the internet. It's very popular to do it in the gym.
Yeah.
They set up a phone, they're working out, a guy comes over and asks if they need help with the weights. It then goes viral online because that guy was being inappropriate. Like you shouldn't. So like as a guy, it's quite complicated to know how and where you can roll up without being filmed and going viral.
I know. So we talked about the first dating paradox, which is just the idea that women now need more from men and are raising the bar because they can be providers on their own, but men weren't taught how to do that, and there's sometimes shame for it. So I think the second big dating paradox is that men are expected to lead and to approach, but I truly feel like in a post-Me Too era, it's much more confusing. And so many people say to me, I don't want to meet on an app that's not romantic. I want to meet in real life. But I'm not finding that people are meeting in real life because people are afraid to approach each other. I think one is being afraid of being called creepy, but the other one, which is what you're talking about, is that this culture of making TikToks or going online with this datertainment to talk about how this person approached you or how inappropriate that was. And so I feel like there's a lot of women waiting for men to approach them, but then shaming the men who do. I think one of the solutions there is we should allow people to shoot their shot in a non-creepy way.
Can I just say something to
Yeah.
that? If the guy rolls up and he's 6'4" and he's, gorgeous,
Yeah, why? I mean, have a good dinner. Hope you have a good rest of your night, my brother.
it's fine, it seems.
The difference between creepy and romantic is the perceived attractiveness of the person making the overture.
I think that is true. If you are super hot, it's less likely to be perceived as creepy. But you have all these people that are saying,
Yeah, I think this is a very meaningful and in-depth conversation. So I like to watch it. Okay. Yes, this is not like me dissecting women and stuff, but I like to watch more in-depth, profound conversation. Later, my brother. So if you guys like it, awesome. If you guys don't, it's cool. I figured I wanted to see this video, and might as well make it a content. So if you guys like it, awesome. But I think this is something that it helps expand the mindset. Knowledge is key. It helps develop better thinking. It's not always about hating women or bashing women. It's not that. So I think this is a good video. It's entertaining to me. It's entertaining for me.
I want to be approached, and they're not being approached. And so there was this rise of run clubs last summer, right? Everyone said the new dating app is a run club. I ask everywhere I go, have you met someone at a run club? No, people are not really meeting there. So since 2017, the number one way that people are meeting is online.
Right.
Hinge is setting up a date every 2 seconds. This is where the dating is happening. If people want more things to happen offline, they actually have to approach each other. And I'm just not seeing that happen.
But my understanding is the majority of women still expect the man to take the initiative.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the most frightening stats I've seen. According to Pew, more than 50% of men between the ages of 18 and 24 have never asked a woman out in person. And I just find that so just upsetting and rattling, because that means they're either not asking people out or they're asking them out online, where quite frankly, they can't demonstrate any sense of excellence. And I think the beautiful thing about human sexuality is sometimes you don't even know why you're attracted to someone. You like the way they smell, you find out they're funny.
Mhm.
And that happens in person. But we need more third spaces, more places people can meet. And also, I actually think it would be helpful to have in the senior year of high school a class called adulting, where amongst other things, you teach them about the interest rate on a credit card. Little things.
Yeah.
My kid can do integers and he doesn't understand the interest rate on his credit card. And also, quite frankly, I think young men need guidance around how to express romantic interest while making the other person feel safe. And also, that if you express romantic interest and ask someone out for coffee and they say no, you're both going to be fine. You haven't committed a crime against humanity. As long as you're respectful and you don't.
Yes, exactly. I think listening to these things, it's part of improving your mindset, improving your way of thinking. So I think videos like this it's very informative and entertaining. So I like it.
Make the person feel uncomfortable. But men aren't even asking women out.
Everything you're saying is what I'm seeing. So I was talking to this incredible 16-year-old girl who built this AI chatbot called Ask Elle, and she's taken all of the relationship science research that she's seen, and she's trained this chatbot, and she's trying to help teens get safe and empowered dating advice. And I asked her, what is the number one question that you're getting? And it's how to ask someone out. And so I think people are really struggling. It's not that teens in all of human history had the secret, it's that they were willing to do it and fail. And now we're just not seeing that. And so I think that we have glossed over the pandemic. It was this really traumatic time, really scary stuff happened, and we don't want to talk about it. But people that came of age during the pandemic, their social skills are worse. They missed out on critical moments of becoming a human. And we are seeing that in the workplace. All of these things about Gen Z, Gen Alpha, that came from something. It came from parenting. It came from digital addiction. It came from the pandemic and online learning. And I think that if you do not have the social skills to approach someone and ask them out, there just will be literally fewer couples.
I want to throw a Molotov cocktail into this and something that's controversial I've gotten pushback on. I think one of the enemies of mating is that there's too little drinking. If you look at millennials, they spend $30 billion on
Yeah.
alcohol. Gen Z, it's crashed to $2 billion. Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman have declared war on drinking. I think young people need to drink more, go out and make a series of bad decisions that might pay off. I don't see drunkenness, I see togetherness. And I don't know how it was for you in your relationship. When I think of the majority of great friendships I have and the romantic opportunities I've had, not always, but often alcohol played a role. And I worry that with a lack of going out, being out of the house, and also a lack of drinking, that we've taken away a social lubricant that breaks down some of the walls and some of the initial awkwardness and entry into a potential romantic relationship.
I think some of the increase in being sober curious comes from interest in being healthy. So we
Yep.
hear from Gen Z, I don't want to have anxiety the next day. They are much less
And it's
likely.
expensive.
Yeah, they are much less likely to millennials to feel like there's a two-drink minimum for dates. But in general, we're seeing less risk-taking behavior from Gen Z. They are getting their licenses far later, if at all. They are losing their virginity much later, if at all. And so I feel like there's this rise of, or there's this decrease in risk-taking behavior, which in some ways is great. You know, fewer kids dying in car crashes and people being
Less teen
responsible.
pregnancy.
But I just feel like people are missing out on the experience to make mistakes as a young person. And I think when I think back to my college experience, if there had been cameras that have high quality video on them at all times, I would have lived a very different college experience. I am so grateful that Instagram was not there when I was in college. And so if you live in a surveillance culture where at any moment somebody is snapping the room and they could see what you're doing, you're going to take fewer risks. And I just feel like there's this entire culture of people being very safe. And part of dating, part of mating is making mistakes, taking risks, and failing.
So what do we do about it, Logan? Scott gave a really good
Yeah.
sort of advice for the young man or the young person who's trying to increase their mating value, their dating value. What advice would you give to a young man about how to be attractive? Because there's going to be a lot of young men listening
Yeah.
right now. I imagine
So,
from the stats.
First of all,
about
I love what
70%.
Scott said in terms of his advice. And I feel like it's one of those things where the secret to happiness or the secret to success is simple but hard. So it's not like there's infinite things you need to do. It's actually quite a simple plan, but it's quite hard to execute on it. A few things that I would add. So one is I have this friend, Sam Parr. He started The Hustle. He started the podcast My First Million. One thing that he did to make himself more attractive as a mate was he would develop these passions and really talk about them on dates, because he found that women were really drawn to the fact that he was pursuing other activities. So he got really into denim, and he would talk about these denim meets that he would go to. And he found that women were really drawn to that. He's very into the growth mindset and working on himself. He felt like that was something that women were so drawn to, how he was growing. Because if you think about the projections, well, when he met my friend Sarah, he wasn't making any money. She was making a lot more than him. But she could see that he had a great path ahead of him because he was constantly working and improving himself. The other thing I would tell men is, through my research, I found that men think, I need to be perfect. I need to be 6 feet tall. Look, women are not expecting you to fly them to the moon. They want effort. Remember the name of their best friend. Text them when they had a hard meeting and say, how did it go? Plan a thoughtful date. And so I think that you have men over here saying, if I'm not 6 feet tall, I don't have a chance. So why participate anyway? And then you have women saying, in some ways, I just want you to be an effortful, nice person, and I'm not even getting that. And so I think that for men, they can actually get much farther than they think and be better than 90% of men by doing some of these bare minimum things that other men aren't doing. So I have this question that I ask in my book, which is when you're deciding if you should break up with someone. If your partner were a piece of clothing in your closet, what would they be?
Is it my clothes or her
Yeah.
clothes? My
Your
clothes.
clothes.
Oh, okay.
And it really has to be gut reaction. So Scott, if you thought of one, I want to hear it.
I thought of like a black silk shirt. And that's probably because that's where we spend quality time together, is when I'm wearing a black silk shirt. Special occasions, date night, restaurant, make an effort.
Do you feel good in it?
Yeah, of course, I feel my best in it. Yeah.
And do you have one for your wife?
Brunello Cucinelli cashmere V-neck sweater makes me look fantastic, makes me better, and is beautiful.
Yes. And mine for my husband would be this awesome orange robe that I have that represents being at home. I love the orange color that's really bright and it represents our family time.
Hmm.
So I've asked this question
I
to.
feel shamed. I feel like mine was so
No,
superficial.
no, yours was great.
Cashmere
No,
V-neck.
no,
We're not
no. I think your answer.
family orange. I feel so shamed.
Dating.
So I work with a lot of very successful women, and that's also because I'm expensive to work with, and that's who my clients are. But I have a newsletter where I hear from 85,000 people. And so what I'm hearing is that a lot of women are saying men are intimidated by the amount of money that I make. They say that they're not going to be, but the more successful I become, the more threatened they are. I'm just talking to tons of women, personal friends. I feel like
I could be true, but I don't believe that in particularly, not in mass. I think men are not intimidated. Men are treated less than. Men are made to feel intimidated. Where if a man made more than you would treat him with more respect or love or whatever, comparative to a man that makes less than you. You wouldn't listen to what he says that often or respect what he says like that because I honestly believe money is power. I believe money is power.
my house on one side of me and then two sides over are women who are having babies, they call it like single mother by choice, where they literally were just like, I can't find a man and I want to become a mom, so I'm going to do it by myself.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there are just all these great women who are saying, Logan, I'm following your advice, I'm putting myself out there, I do all these things, but they're just not finding partners.
Do you find that the more successful a woman becomes, the more difficult it becomes for her to find a man that will not feel emasculated by her success?
I don't think that there's an exact correlation because it really depends who the guy is. There are guys out there who are like, let's be a power couple. But I feel like there are women who just feel like there is not enough good guys for them. And I'm curious what you think about this, but I live in the Bay Area. I'm seeing so much polyamory. And I think polyamory is interesting. I'm pro polyamory. I like the fact that people are thinking about relationship structures in a new way. 50% of marriages end in divorce. Obviously, our one size fits all approach to marriage isn't working. But I'm also wondering, well, let me tell you the story. I went to this dating event, and the dating event had 5 single women who were great, and their friends were hyping them up. And then there was 2 guys, and they were both polyamorous. And so I wonder if you're a guy who feels like there's not that many good guys, why should I have to choose? I feel like
Exactly.
that's a trend that I'm worried about.
Portia polygamy. If it's never been better to be a very attractive male, but you have so much opportunity, it does not incent good behavior or long-term
I'm seeing that more and more, where if you are a top tier man, he not complaining about his life.
relationships.
And I work with these guys, and you might think that they're the happiest people in the world. They are having sex, they are getting a lot of attention, but they're suffering from decision paralysis. And these are some of the guys that hit 40, 42, and they haven't gotten married, they don't have kids, and they sort of are like, why would I ever settle down if I don't have to, or I'm going to wait as long as possible? But they don't understand the opportunity cost, which is building a life with someone, having kids. Every year that you wait to have kids is a year that your kids will be alive without you. And so I really feel like these people in the top percentage, yes, they're having a much easier time, but they also have problems because they're having decision paralysis and they're not settling down.
But I would just say, I think the reality though on the ground is that if you're a high status male, you think age is on your side.
And it is.
And because the reality is the math is just unfair to women.
It is.
Because if you're a 30-year-old male making really good money and it, relative, like just not unattractive, at 40, you're going to be even sexier. Your sexual currency goes up.
I do think that there's a point where it starts to go down. And I've seen that with my coaching clients. And part of that is just how the dating apps work. That if you are an attractive woman and you set your age maximum at 40, I do see that those men see diminishing returns after that age.
Well, especially if they haven't ever been in a long-term relationship.
Right. Then
I
that
think
is
that's
seen
probably
as a
red
clear
flag.
red flag.
If you're looking to take the next step in your tech career, you'll want to hear about our... What role does feminism and the rise of feminism play in all of this? Because I've had people on my podcast.
Yeah.
I think actually our last episode we published was a lady who's a child psychologist. She's been that way for 3 decades. And she came on and said that the feminist movement has let men and women down in some ways. There's been great upsides, but there's also been a cost. And one of the things she was really big on, which I thought would be extremely controversial, it turns out it wasn't in the comment section, is that she believes women should be there for the first 2 years of a child's life. And I was like, I questioned her on that. I was like, and then I looked at the stats and I looked at the research, and she basically makes the case that because the mother is producing certain hormones, so I searched and it was true, we fact checked that episode. And then beyond there, the man, the father, brings out another set of hormones in the young child, which are about play and adventure and all these kinds of things. So she makes the case that we've kind of lied to women and we've told them that they can have it all. They can have an incredible career. They can also be incredible mothers. And she says that in her office, she often sees mothers coming in saying that they're 39 years old, they're struggling, they're trying to do IVF, they feel like they were lied to, throwing all of that out there.
I'm going to quote Scott to Scott, which is, you can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yeah, I don't, we can talk about what is the best hormone balance and brings out the best in kids. And then there's the real world. And my partner was working at Goldman Sachs with 2 babies and getting up at 5 a.m. and it was hell for her. And at the same time, I was struggling with trying to get economic traction because my whole identity as a man, I'm not proud of this, has been defined by money.
So is mine. I don't think men say this
Really?
enough. Like, yeah, I thought this was really weird because we're in Austin right now. And my team put me up in a hotel and it's just like a normal hotel. I'm
Yeah.
like, so I don't give a fuck. My girlfriend comes to town tonight. Immediately my brain goes, oh my God, we need to move into a better hotel Airbnb because my girlfriend, I've been with her for 7 years. She doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
She doesn't care about material things. She doesn't have a Louis Vuitton anything. She's a breathwork, she's a yogi, right? But there's still this part of me, even at this stage, where I'm like convinced she's not going anywhere, where I constantly think about, I need to be successful, I need to have money, I need to demonstrate strength, or she won't like me. It's so
Yo, Skull, that's amazing that you're at least a supervisor. That's really cool. Yeah, it's rough. That's the thing where a lot of men. This is the thing where I also like to point out that a lot of people don't understand when men have to be successful or establish a good life. No one understands the sacrifice that goes along with it. No one understands the sacrifice.
weird because it's not true. Like objectively, I know it's not true, but it's in me.
I don't know. I think it's mostly true.
What do you
Um,
mean?
I think in a capitalist society, the healthcare of your children, the opportunities your children have, your ability to provide, your ability to take care of your parents, unfortunately, in our society, is so tightly correlated to money
Yeah.
that I think at the end of the day, masculinity kind of comes down to provider, protector,
Yo, Cash, what's up, my brother? It's been a while. Miss ya, man.
and procreator. And I think every young man should at least start with the notion they're going to be the economic provider. And by the way, that might mean getting out of the way and being more supportive of your partner who happens to be better at the whole money thing than you.
Mhm.
That's part of masculinity too.
Right.
But a good place to start is to assume in a capitalist society that you have a responsibility to be economically viable. And every piece of incentive in our society, I remember in the 70s when I was in grade school, our principal was a cool guy. He wore cool jackets and he had great hair and he smelled Aquavelva and he drove a 240Z. You could be a high character, handsome, interesting, cool guy into karate or of his economic viability. And I think it's gotten worse. I don't think you used to be able to, if you were a high character, kind of cool, interesting, nice guy who was a principal at a junior high school, you had sexual currency. Now I think you can be a fucking dipshit, but if you've sold $10 million in Dogecoin, you can get laid. And it's just getting worse because our capitalist economy is providing so many advantages solely based on money. And it sends the wrong signal. But I just tell dudes, you have to be economically viable. And some of that is just having discipline around saving money
Mhm.
and showing that you have your act together. Maybe you don't make a lot of money, but I'm responsible. I'll be a good mate. I'll be a good partner. Maybe you're making more money than me, but I'll bring discipline. I know how to fix shit. I can be a good mate. But one of the things I really am worried about in America is just everything has become about the Benjamins. Character is being squeezed out by money.
I agree.
God, that sounded awful.
I agree. I've said this countless times before. The top things that women look for is no longer, or if it ever was, it's not integrity, morality, personality, character. No, it's looks, charm, and money. That is the priority. That is top of the list of women. Now, yes, she may want a man that's morally sound, has integrity, whatever, but that is after he has at least two of the three. Looks, charm, money. If he has he gets his foot through the door. If he has that, he gets his foot through the door. Once his foot is through the door, now she cares that if he's has integrity, if he's nice, if he's a morally sound man, if he has whatever his personality. Once he has, those three attributes, now she cares all the other shit. Instead of, I believe those shit should be more important than the top 3 things. Yo, what's up, redneck? What's up, my brother? See, yo, that's why this is what I'm saying, right? I made a post on the community where I want to see how everyone is thinking, because I do want to make a, do a live or whatever where we can, it's like a men's therapy or chat group, because I believe that a lot of us men, we're not getting the opportunity to talk about our day, talk about our feelings, talk about our thoughts. We don't want to go to therapy because honestly, we're spending money to do what? Just talk? No. I want to create a chat group, okay? Where it's going to be alive. I'm thinking about that. Alive, where we can talk about how we're feeling, what's going on in our life. And not saying that we're solving problems, but it's at the very least, it's nice to at least get your emotions out, because I honestly believe that it doesn't take away from your masculinity, from your being a man, to talk about your feelings, talk about your mind, talk about what you're thinking, you know? And if we can, solve problems or encourage each other or support each other in any kind of way, still a good thing. Your problems don't need to be solved, but at the very least, hearing support is very crucial, that I think a lot of men don't get. A lot of men don't get at least support. Solving problems, at the end of the day, I mean, it's not easy, but at the very least, we don't get support. So I do want to create like a live stream where we are just chatting with each other, like a hangout, true hangout. And because like for the chat, I love you guys, I really do. I think you guys as friends. So I do want to do that, right? So it might be once a week or once every other week. So I think that'd be fun, and I think that would be therapeutic. I think that'd be very therapeutic, because one of the things I've said it for with therapy is that you're spending money for just talking, and I believe that your money should go to improving yourself in other areas. Where why not create free kind of communities where you're not having to spend money, and then you can still get your emotions out, where I want to create a community where we understand each other. I want to do it where no trolling, no, let's not like disparage each other, not like put each other down, but where we could just talk about it, express how we're feeling, what's going on in our day, what's going on in our dating life, in our family life, in our personal life, whatever. I think that's therapeutic, and I think that would be very good, emotionally, and mentally. So that's what I'm thinking about doing.
Look, I want to ask you, have you ever felt what Scott describes? Have you ever felt that your sort of sense of self-worth equates to how much money you have? Because I felt that.
I don't think I as much have money equals identity and self-worth, but I do think for many people, there's a sense that money equals security. And so we're all chasing that dollar, which is security.
But like
But I think for men, it's much stronger. I
Yeah.
don't relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I've never actually asked a
Yeah.
woman this before, but it's the number one topic of conversation in my group chat
Yeah.
with my boys is how much are we working Saturday and Sunday to make more money, make ourselves more successful? And then one of my friends, who's not
A woman don't really necessarily think that, because deep down, a woman knows that that's not her value. Money isn't a woman's value. It's her looks. It is her looks. 100%. Her looks is her currency. Her looks is her resource. This is why makeup industry is $1 billion industry. It's $1 billion, 100 or whatever $1 billion industry. Makeup, plastic surgery, those shit is $1 billion industry, because women know that is their value. That is what defines them. Beauty. Men know money is what defines men. That is reality, especially in even capitalistic or not, it's resources.
in my group chat, but one of my extended friends went through financial hardship, and he's in the lead up to starting a family, etc. And he went through a moment where he was going to be declared bankrupt, and he was inconsolably depressed. His partner was fine. She was kind of like, we'll get through this. But he actually said to me, he goes, I've never felt more worthless. And that's something that I've heard echoed by many men who go through sort of economic, financial roller coasters. And
That was actually one of the stats in that report, the Lost Boys report. Richard Reeves talks about this. I think that's actually where it comes from. So Richard Reeves says that the number one cause of death for young men under 15 is suicide, and that men in general, the things that they describe in their notes when they commit suicide are these words: worthless and useless. And so if men feel like their identity and their value and their worth comes from money, when they don't have money or they can't be a provider and they're sort of on the edge of society, then they're literally opting out, sometimes with their lives. Okay, I want to take the metaphorical iPad and ask you guys some questions, because I feel like I've kind of said what I want to say about this topic, but I'm sure there are just millions of people that look up to both of you as symbols of masculinity. Scott, this is true, right? Moms talk to you all the time and say, how can I help my son? And so there's things that I want to know, because this topic is the thing I'm most passionate about. I want to spend the next 5 years really helping with this supply problem and the mating gap, but I don't know that men will listen to me, but they will listen to you. So I want to learn from you. So if you could teach a dating boot camp to all guys and even talk about what you would have them unlearn, what are some of those messages?
A dating boot camp.
Yeah, or being a human boot camp. Let's just
We
extend
would
it.
have module 1, comedy.
Ooh,
Because the only thing
like
that got
that.
me laid when I was broke was I was like slightly funny
Funny.
sometimes.
Yeah,
So, like,
great.
I could be
100%.
broken funny
Okay,
and
this
I'd
could
have
be
like
improv.
sunsets.
This could
Yeah.
be just this. Yeah, keep going.
Something around confidence, which is just standing. I noticed that posture correlates to dating success. So I'd have men learn to stand up straight and to control their posture and take up more space. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, which is don't be shriveled. So like standing up straight, which is obviously one of the things that going to the gym does. It kind of pulls you out a little bit as well. Typical, but going out of fashion, male manners. Open up the door. I still open up the door for my girlfriend every single day, even though apparently they went through a phase where that was seen as like not okay to do. But I've always taken great pride in it. And funnily enough, opening up the door for my partner makes me feel good. I'm like doing it for selfish reasons. It makes me feel like a man. It makes me feel strong. Also, like when a bus comes, I love the fact that I put my hand across my girlfriend. That for me makes me feel like a man. I love that when we cross the road, I'm the one that's looking out. I love that I stand on the roadside of the pavement, etc. So I teach men these kind of behaviors. And definitely going to the gym. And then, as Scott said, like entrepreneurship or making some money, that would be central to my boot camp. I'll give you one more. It would be conflict resolution. And this goes to like the emotional empathy point. One thing that I struggle with, or at least I struggled with until my girlfriend coached me, and I did this podcast so many times that I learned some lessons, is just how to deal with conflict when the sparring partner is a woman. Because men in conflict, we have a certain way typically, but learning the skill of hearing and understanding your partner, and which is very difficult. And like, listen, this might just be me. I find it incredibly difficult to sit and to listen to my partner for 90 minutes when she tells me indirectly all the things I did wrong. I've had to learn the skill of doing that. And I sat here with someone who's a psychologist and said, they said to me, if you're a man, you have to learn the skill of sitting down for 90 minutes a week and letting your partner tell you everything that they're feeling and going through. With my boys, we don't do that.
Yeah.
When we go on holiday, it is total silence. We're eating fucking Pringles and watching the game. But when I'm with my partner, and I'm sure when she's with her friends, it's talking. So I've developed the skill now of just like sitting and listening. And then sometimes I take notes. And then sometimes I repeat back to her what she just said to me. And this is totally alien to me. And it hurts when I do it. It like hurts. And I find it so uncomfortable. Like I find it really, really uncomfortable to do that.
Even though this is something you spend hours a
Yeah,
week doing for your
100%.
job,
It's so unnatural to me.
but you've worked on it.
I've worked on it, yeah. I did it like 3 days ago. My girlfriend said, I was traveling around the world.
Yeah.
We were in, I don't even know what country we were in. She goes, I've got some things I want to talk about. Can we put some time in the calendar? Do you have 60 minutes? I've got off stage in Sweden. I put in 60 minutes into my calendar. She video calls me and she talks to me for about 45 minutes. I don't have anything to say. I'm so tired. And I just sit there and listen. And in between the lines, it's like things I could do better. She's not blaming me or anything, but it's hard for me. My boys would never do that. Our friendship isn't contingent on those things. So that's what I would say.
I love that.
Like, I don't know if that you relate to that, but
I think about this a lot with my boys. And I think kind of the three legs of the stool are provider. I'm probably over focused on the economics. That doesn't necessarily mean making a lot of money, but at least being disciplined and responsible about it. Developing skills, certification, having a plan, right? Don't be the guy ordering a bottle of Grey Goose at 2 a.m. Like, I'm going home because I got to get up. You know, I have a plan. And, you know, I have a vision for how I'm going to be a good provider. A protector, good manners. Your default system is protection. You constantly speak well of people behind their backs. You hear someone being critical of someone else, your inclination is to defend them. You don't demonize special interest groups. Your default setting, if somebody needs help anywhere or is being threatened, it's so heartbreaking to me that women feel unsafe when they see men. When they see a group of men coming down the street, surveys show women are inclined to cross the street. And it just feels like from an early age, men need to be taught anyone smaller, anyone more vulnerable than you,
anyone in a special interest group, your default is protection. That's what men do. Think about masculinity, a soldier, a cop, a fireman. What do? At the end of the day, they protect. That is your default operating system as a move to protection. And then procreator. I think you should want to have sex. I think you should be willing to take risks. I tell my boys, I did this for a while, they can't get back in the house unless they talk to a stranger. And my oldest, no problem. Hey, what's going on? My youngest, not as easy. Just go up and pet their dog.
Mm.
I think there's so many men out there that have no willingness or ability to open, to, to just say, hi, where are you from? To just open and to want a romantic relationship is a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Modulate your porn. Decide, ask yourself, would you want to have sex with you? Get strong, get fit, get your act together, smell nice, groom. If you can't dress well, find someone who can dress you, and initiate contact and want to have a relationship with someone. That's a wonderful thing. That mojo is the most purposeful, wonderful thing in my life, is that I'm raising two patriotic, decent men. And it started with me really wanting to have sex with this woman I saw at the pool at the Raleigh Hotel, right? And I know that sounds crass. It's like, I looked at her and thought, I'm really attracted to this woman, so I'm going to take a risk. In the middle of the day, without the benefit of alcohol, I'm going to walk up and introduce myself to her and another guy and a woman she was with. Hey, where are you guys from? And then 18 months later, our first son was born, middle name Raleigh, after the hotel. Take risks. Want to have mating opportunities. You're a provider. Your default system is a protector. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a procreator.
I love everything you said. And then one thing was going through my head as you said it feels really sad that in this moment in time, we have to tell people to become procreators. Don't you feel like there's something sick in our society if that has to be taught? Evolutionarily, all of our software is towards procreation. Like that is how we are wired. Yet people are so sick from the food that they eat, from all the medications that people are on, from all the pornography, from all the technology, that you literally have to teach your sons the importance of procreation. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm really freaked out by all of this stuff, because we are at a point in society where in South Korea, of 100 people of childbearing age, they are going to produce 12 grandchildren based on a 0.7 birth rate. And the fact that you talk about the P of procreation, like I'm so worried about our society.
It's 60% of 30-year-olds 40 years ago used to have a kid. Now it's 27%.
So when I was on the plane on the way here, I told this woman who was sitting next to me what I was going to be talking about. And her gut reaction was, oh, why do we have to worry about that? Women are doing better than men. Like, great, let us do that for the first time in history. Like her gut reaction was, why is this a problem? Then I started telling her these stats around lowest marriage rate, we're approaching the lowest marriage rate in US history. The birth rate has gone down 20% in 20 years. And she didn't know these numbers. And I feel like people are afraid to talk about this topic because they think it's a zero-sum game where when men lose, women win and vice versa.
Yeah.
But right now we're all losing.
There's huge economic impact too, because it used to be 12 people working age to support every senior. Now it's 3 to 1. If we don't have kids, we're going to go into economic decline.
Yeah, South Korea is replacing its nursery schools with its nursing homes. Like they are the anti-example for us. And I think people need to be paying attention.
By 2050, about 40% of the population will be senior citizens, and the labour force could have halved within the next 40 years. The Bank of Korea warns that if current trends persist, the Korean economy could begin contracting in 10 years' time. And this presents a national service risk as the country relies on its conscripted military. And this will fall by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people by 2025. It'll half, oh my gosh, could fall from 250,000 troops to 125,000 troops. Politics is the last thing I wanted to talk about, and how this sort of intertwines with everything we've talked about today. Obviously, Trump is now in power. And as we saw in the data, and it was touched on earlier on, young men have become more right-leaning and more conservative than ever before. The left hasn't necessarily offered the best vision of masculinity to young men, as something Scott's talked about previously. I was wondering, I think this morning in the hotel, I was like, how is the left going to get men back? Is that possible? Because the vision of masculinity, this is something Scott's talked about, that the left portrays is not, doesn't seem to be in line with all the things we've just described that we feel intuitively as men. The things we think are important, like economic viability, being strong,
I'll let Scott go first.
Well, on the right, they've conflated masculinity with coarseness and cruelty. The two kind of role models, President Trump, who in my opinion demonstrates a lack of grace and a lack of empathy and a lack of kindness. And Elon Musk is currently being sued by 2 women for sole custody of their kid because he hasn't seen the kid. I mean, those are the role models we want for young men? And on the left, their vision of masculinity is act more like a woman. I don't think that's helpful either. I went to the Democratic National Convention,
and there was a parade of special interest groups, everyone was represented, except for the group that needs the most representation right now, in my view, and that is young men. If you go to the DNC website, they list 16 special interest groups and they say who we serve. They call it out, who we serve. Asian Pacific Islanders, seniors, the disabled, immigrants, Black Americans. And I added it up. It's 74% of the US population. And when you say you're actively advocating for 74%, you're not advocating for the 74%, you're discriminating against the 26%. And who are the 26%? Young men.
Is this a consequence of DEI?
I think that's part of it. I think there's been so many groups that have been discriminated against. And the way I would just loosely describe the Democratic Party is we have the right ideas and then we just take it too far. You know, there were women have gotten a raw deal, so they need advantage. You know, gays have been persecuted. The people, non-whites have had. There were 12 Black people 60 years ago in Princeton, Harvard, and Yale combined. That was a problem. This year, more than 60% of Harvard's freshman class identify as non-white. So I think we got to get out of identity politics. But the notion, it largely came from the left, this notion of toxic masculinity. There's no such thing, because there's violence, there's people who are criminals, there's people who are unkind. That means they're not masculine. Masculinity is being a protector, a provider, a procreator. And the Democratic Party seems to believe that leaning into anything around your advantage of being male in terms of your strength, your kindness, you're wanting to procreate, you're initiating sexual contact or sexual romantic interest is somehow a threat and somehow toxic. I just think they've sent absolutely the wrong signal. And into that void has stepped basically thinly veiled misogyny that is just so ugly. You know, Trump flew right into it. The reason Trump won this election, in my view, is the groups that pivoted hardest from blue to red, 2020 to 2024, were Latinos who were sick of being categorized by their identity. But numbers 2 and 3 were people under the age of 30, especially males, who are not doing very well and feel like Donald Trump feels their pain, and women age 45 to 64. And my thesis is that's their mothers. Because if your son isn't doing well, you don't care about territorial sovereignty in Ukraine or transgender rights. You just want to change. My son isn't doing well.
Those are the people that whisper to me in the streets about these conversations. It's the 40 to 55-year-old mother who has a son who doesn't feel like she can speak up, but says to me privately that she's worried about her kids. And actually, we had some mothers write in, all of which wanted to stay anonymous, saying this exact same thing. They've got an 18-year-old son, they're super concerned. They've got a 16-year-old son, the son looks lost. As the stats show from the report, they're not leaving home in the same way that women, their daughters leave home, but they don't know what to do about it. So for those parents that are listening now, we can't change society. What would you recommend a parent of a young boy does?
First thing is forgive yourself. There's this natural part of a separation where, and I think this is true of girls, but especially boys, where to make the separation easier, we don't get along with our parents in our senior year in high school. And that doesn't mean your son doesn't love you. That doesn't mean your son's not going to figure it out. But to forgive yourself, but going back to more actionable things, try and get men involved in his life. And then, you know, dumb stuff like my mom made sure I was in Boy Scouts. My mom, when I got cut from the high school basketball and football team, she enrolled me in city leagues so I could.
I do have some questions for Scott, but I would love for you to answer them too. So one of them is, what is something about being a man that you learned growing up that you have had to unlearn? And I'm wondering specifically in how you're raising your sons to avoid.
You know, I don't know if I necessarily learned it, but I guess what I'm developed it. The Arab man? I don't know which one you think is Arab. The middle man is white. The man on the far end is black, and she's, you know, a white woman. One thing I think a lot of men, or what I need to unlearn, is that not sharing my thoughts, not sharing my views, putting others before myself. I think that's something that I think, and not in a bad way, okay, where you only care about how you make other people feel, yet you neglect your own feelings, because men shouldn't feel
some of those things.
I think a great proxy for masculinity and manhood is, and Richard Reeves introduced me to this, I think it's so powerful, and that is surplus value. It's not about a religious ceremony. It's not about having sex. It's not about an age. It's about getting to the point of surplus value. You create more tax revenue than you absorb. I say to my boys, you're negative value. Look at all the resources going into you. Look at all the love. We love you so much more than you love us. Your teachers are spending all this time and energy, and you aren't giving anything back. At some point, that needs to pivot. So, creating more tax revenue, noticing people's life, registering more complaints from other people than you are complaining, protecting people, adding surplus value. So, these notions that, and I wasn't that guy. I wanted more from everyone else than I was giving. I was the guy that's, when someone honked at me, I was the guy that sped up and honked back to restore the universe to its place. If a ticket counter agent at the airline counter was rude to me, I needed to get back in their face to restore harmony to the universe because I'm a fucking baller. And what you realize is being a man is occasionally taking a hit, right? It's having surplus value. It's noticing people's lives. It's listening to complaints. It's occasionally thinking, well, maybe this person who cut me off in traffic, I don't know what's going on with them. Maybe their kid has diabetes. Maybe they're going through a divorce. It's adding more value than you're taking. And until the age of like 40, I looked at every relationship. Am I getting more out of this than I'm giving? And if I'm not, I'm out. And what you realize is good business partnerships, you add as much or more value than your partners. Good relationships, you witness the person's life. You make them feel fucking awesome. If you leave this world a little bit in debt,
Your romantic partner, that's also the last person you want to turn to and say you're struggling. Because again, for me, that felt like I was being emasculated. So I remember the day very vividly when I was like 30 years old, turning to my girlfriend and like running the experiment of letting her know that I was struggling with something and how difficult that was. But the only reason I did it was because I almost felt like I had no fucking choice. I'd like gotten to the point where I was like, I need.
well, just a message to young people in general. The arc of happiness is a smile. And that is kind of 0 to 18 is prom, football, making out. It's generally pretty happy. The least happy years for people are usually kind of 18 to 45. Economic stress, relationships are hard. You probably are someone you love a great deal, gets sick and dies. And if you're struggling, what I would just say is, don't be afraid to reach out for help, but also realize that if you're not a member of parliament and you don't have a fragrance named after you, it doesn't mean you're failing. And to forgive yourself and to recognize that those are tough years.
I mean, okay. I mean, it's interesting. Yes, more men need to not put so much pressure on themselves. I thought this was a good, interesting video. What do you guys think? Hope you guys liked it. I thought it was a good stream because this was a really good video. It's very informative, very in depth, very deep. So I think it's a good video. I want to do more like these, right? Just more in-depth topics, more in-depth listening, viewing videos. So I think that's good. I wanted to backtrack and talk more about, like I said, I want to end out on saying that please do the poll. I did a poll, okay, in the community tab where tell me if you guys like the idea of doing like a men's therapy group where we get together, once a week, once every other week, once a month or whatever, where listeners, people in the chat, whatever, you can join the live where we talk, we express our feelings, express our thoughts, talk about how our day is going, talk about how our life is going, and it's not necessarily about solving your problems, and if we could, we would, but it's more about feeling supported, feeling that you're not alone, feeling that there's other men that's going through the same thing you're going through, and feeling like you're heard. Because I think that a lot of problems that a lot of average men are going through is that they feel alone, they feel unheard. No one is listening. No one is there for them. There's no support. There's no support system. Women have it. Other marginalized group have support system, but average men, no one is supporting you. So please participate in that my poll, because I want to know if there's a good amount of people who want to do it, want to join it, want to be a part of the therapy group, because I think it's important that a lot of men get that opportunity to express their thoughts, their feelings, to talk about their day, stuff like that. Because a lot of men, I've been there. At the end of the day, after work, I go home, no one to talk to. I'm just talking to myself. I'm just talking to an empty room. I'm just talking to nobody. So I think it could be very uh invigorating, very fulfilling if you just at least get your voice out to other people where you know that you are being supported. So I want to maybe start that. So that might be a good thing. So please tell me if you guys like it or not. You could do it in the comment section as well. You could do it in the comment sections of the video. If you guys like it, if you like the thought, you like the idea, that might be cool. So, other than that, hope you guys liked the video tonight. So see you guys on the next live. Later, guys. Black Redneck, Skull, Apocalypse, Cash.